Okay, we're ready. So I'm calling the meeting to order, the advisory committee at 6 p.m. on May 21st, 2020. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the South Board Advisory Committee will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information in the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and a requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the Town of Southborough's website at www.southboroughtown.com. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch or participate in the meeting may do so in the following manner by finding the meeting at www.southboroughtown.com/remote meetings. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite our best efforts, we'll post on Southborough's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. So tonight, everybody's going to have a number assigned to them because I think we're going to do quite a bit of voting. So we're going to do it in alphabetical order. So just remember your number. So Judy, you're 1. I'm doing it by last name. So Judy, you're 1. I'm 2. Andrew D will be 3. Chelsea, you're 4. Tim is 5. Andrew P is 6. And Mr. Rooney, last but not least, is 7. Okay. So hopefully that'll avoid a little confusion. All right, so our first agenda item is to approve 4 sets of meeting minutes. Let's start with the earliest. Andrew, have you got those pulled up?
Yeah, let me pull them up now.
There we are. All right, so the first one's going to be February 20th. We've already edited this in part. Chelsea's edits are reflected here. So the question, go ahead.
2 more, sorry.
Are we sharing?
I wasn't going to share the screen on minutes. Do you want me to?
It could be helpful if people have edits.
Do you want me to make me the presenter and I'll screen share and then edit them on the fly?
Let's try it. So, Tom, did you? I assume you heard that. So, can you make Andrew either or for a few minutes, make him the presenter or the host? Host is the right term, I think, Andrew.
Kathy, you're a co-host. If you right-click on his name, you should get an option to make him a presenter.
Okay, I did not. I right-clicked to, okay, let me try. Okay.
We started so well.
Yep, I see it now. And he's a co-host, so Tom must have done it. You're co-host, Andrew.
All right, let me switch over. And we're doing the 220 first, right? Yeah. All right, so you should see it.
Yep.
All right.
So line 89.
Okay.
Oh, so maybe. So I have a different number than you do. So it's under operational budget section.
Yep.
Can you go up a little bit? Sorry.
80.
I'm sorry. Can you go down a little bit? You're in the right section. Sorry. So just the sentence, she is concerned with adding a part-time position for an average of 8 hours a week. That wasn't related to the Youth and Family Services, so that needs to go in the second to last sentence of that paragraph. It needs to go right before Ms. Cook acknowledged that. I'm row 94. And then, so line 107, so it should be a little bit further down. It was when we were talking about the town accountant section. Yeah, so in row 109, for Mr. Purple stated that this would help make the transition for the new accountant more efficient and smoother as it relates to the FY20 audit.
Audit. All right.
And I was good with the rest. I just had one other change on 226.
Anybody else for 220?
Nope.
Okay, 226.
Oh, 226, the day. I was like, I thought you meant row 226.
Sorry, Andrew. Yeah.
All right, let
We're
me
mov-
save
we're
that
moving on.
before I lose it. All right. 126, 513. Put that one. All right, can you see that one or you still see the old one, right?
Old one.
Yep, let me switch shares. All right, 226.
Okay, so row 48.
Okay.
I just want to clarify what the motion was on this. And I read it a few times and then I realized that maybe I was the only one that was confused, but
You're not.
we made the motion was to make the decision at annual town meeting. So I think we just need to clarify that we didn't vote to go to town meeting with the full time. So I think we just need to add to make the decision at town meeting for the vote.
Okay.
So Chelsea, I was confused in a different way on this item.
Okay.
The roll call vote above at line 44 was about Youth and Family Services.
Right.
I thought this one at line 48 was for the MIS position. Because that's, I think, the only one that passed 6-0.
So I
this
thought
was-
we decided to vote at annual town meeting for, like, it wasn't going to be printed in the warrant for Youth and Family on that specific budget.
Okay, so maybe there are two issues here, but I know that we never had a 6-0 vote for Youth and Family Services.
No, this was just
No,
to
this
postpone
was-
the vote till town meeting.
Yeah, but we didn't intend to wait to town meeting. We were still going to try to vote. We just couldn't get all 7 people there. So yes, it was going to say ATM on the warrant because we had no choice. We were out of time, but we still were going to try to vote before town meeting. We weren't going to wait to town meeting and then vote. So that should
Maybe we
be
need to
clarified.
clarify that it needs to
Yes.
be printed in the warrant as
Yeah.
at annual town meeting.
Okay, so to support the classification as at town meeting for the 1 full-time employee, something like that.
That's fine.
Delete this. Something like that.
I would say the printed label in the warrant. Because we would, like Kathy said, the intent wasn't to go to town meeting without knowing
Yep.
what we were going to report.
Okay,
Okay.
That was the only change I had. on this one.
Anybody else for the 26th?
Yeah, did we roll the MIS into the general roll call vote for the budget? Or did we do it separately?
I think we approved that as because we approved it as the part-time, so I don't think we were changing anything.
Anyone else? Okay, so
Yeah,
let's go on
I think it was in
to,
the main.
are you still looking, Andrew?
Yeah, I'm good there. Let me go to the open the other one.
So March 10th?
Right.
I didn't have any other changes, so unless somebody else did, you probably don't.
I've got one on 5/13, but that's it. Anybody else on 3/10?
Yes. Something I thought was missing. Wait for it to come up. Towards the bottom, there's a reference about Fay School. This is in regards to the St. Mark's Church project.
Okay. Probably right here. Okay, here we go. They haven't asked Fay School for the
Right.
money.
148. So I did ask them to reach out to Fay School and to St. Mark's School to
Okay.
make donations, and that didn't make its way into the minutes.
It's Mr. Weiler, right?
Yes.
Does that look about right there, Tim?
That's great. Thank you. That's all I had.
Okay, so let's go to May 13.
Switch that one over. Actually works pretty good.
You're doing good. Okay, Mr. Semino is in the audience, so if I say something wrong, I'm sure he's going to correct me here. But if you go down to the section on where we were talking about town meeting, which is toward the very top.
Yep.
Okay, so there it is on line 30. Okay, so what he's going to do is present a consent agenda for those articles that are perfunctory and routine, just like we did last year. There's, I don't know, 10 to 15 of those, right? And as for the audience to approve those in one fell swoop. Now, the audience will have a chance to remove anyone that they need to, that they don't want to. Remember last year, I think John Butler had maybe one or two removed. So that's what that is. Then then we're going to go on to the articles that we need to approve before July 1st, which is mostly the budget. Some of the CPC articles that need to be approved will be there too. So it's two groups here. So we've got the perfunctory ones, consent, then we're going to deal with the ones that have to be approved. Then he's going to ask for indefinite postponement, I believe, of all the other articles to the special. So that's what I want us to say there. And let me make sure he's not raising his hands.
Hey, Kathy, Mr. Semino appears to have his hand raised.
Okay, so let me get him in here. Okay, so
I just unmuted. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yes, we can.
Well, first of all, hello, team.
Hey,
Let me just do a housekeeping thing before we talk about the substance of town meeting, because I think what you've got written here, and Kathy, even what you just said verbally is a little bit not correct, but not through no fault of your own. Things keep evolving a little bit. So,
Okay, but hold on a second, because let us just get these minutes approved, and then I do want you to talk.
okay,
So let me just correct what I did say. It may be wrong now, but it's what I did say, which is the consent agenda is the perfunctory articles, Andrew. Then we're going to approve the ones that must be approved before July 1st. And then we're going to ask for indefinite postponement of all others. So that's what I want you to say in that section there.
Okay.
And then it sounds like it's going to be wrong, but at least that's what I said when we did the meeting. Okay, that's good enough.
I'll just change this to be indefinitely proposed, right?
That's one choice. Mr. Semino might be telling us he's going to do it a different way, but that's one way to do it.
Okay, I'll just be,
And it's indefinitely postponed.
that's fine. I'll just leave it as to be proposed. I don't care about what the mechanism is. Okay.
Okay. All right. So can someone make a motion to approve all 4 sets of minute meetings?
Kathy, I do have something about your first set of minutes. That was what I wanted to
Oh,
mention.
sorry, Paul. Go right ahead.
So the very first change that Ms. Malinowski made, she moved a sentence that said she was concerned. But in moving the sentence, the word she now has no relation to her name. So I think
Correct.
you've got to clarify that, because it follow a sentence that had her name in it, but now that it's been moved, nobody was going to know who she was. And the most recent name prior to she in the sentence that's now been moved is Ms. Buzz. So you might want to go back to that very first edit and housekeeping.
Yep, I'll change that to CM or Ms. Malinowski.
Okay, so we're going to fix that. So
I made that change.
Hey Kathy, I'm sorry, I didn't, if you were going to approve all at once, I should have told you that I wasn't present on the 226, so I'll have to abstain on that one, but
Yeah.
I didn't know we were going to do a one fell swoop.
Yeah.
I
You can
apologize.
still vote. You can still vote on it technically.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of voting if I wasn't there.
all right, we don't need you to vote that night. So someone make a motion for 220, 310, and 513.
Okay, I move that we approve minutes for, I remember 513, 310, what was the other one?
220 and
220.
226.
And 226.
Now just do it, we're going to do 226 separately. So John can vote on these 3.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so
Second.
motion- Okay, who seconded?
That's me.
Okay, Tim seconded. All right, all in favor of approving the minutes for 220, 310, and 513?
Judy goes first.
Are we doing this by the number that you assigned to us?
Yes, Judy, you're one.
1. I approve.
You say aye.
Aye.
Okay, aye.
There's
Andrew
no
Dean's not
Andrew.
here, so Chelsea's next.
Okay. Malinowski, aye.
Martell, aye.
Pfaff, aye.
What do you got?
Okay, so that is 6-0, right?
Yep.
Okay, all right, now someone make a motion to approve the 226 minutes.
I make a motion to approve the 226 minutes.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Martell seconded. All in favor of approving the 226 minutes? Cook, excuse me, sorry, Judy.
Aye.
Say your name.
Judy Buds, aye.
Cook, aye.
Malinowski, aye.
Martell, aye.
Pfaff, aye.
Rooney abstain.
Okay, so that's 5-0-1. All right.
Right.
Okay, done, caught up. Okay, so now, since Mr. Semino is with us, he wanted a chance just to update us on the state of annual town meeting.
So as of today, the date, it remains unchanged. It's scheduled for June 13 at 1 PM, which obviously is a Saturday. That could theoretically move a little bit, but as of now, we're intending to go forward. And we will have some pretty robust COVID aware arrangements. We're going to do it in the gym. We're going to separate people. We're going to have aisles. We're going to have, folks are going to be expected to wear masks, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's going to be a bizarro world town meeting, no question about it. The idea of how to get through the agenda is morphed a little bit. What we call the consent agenda, I have to be very precise about this, because when I talk about grouping articles, some people get that confused with what we do. We have in our bylaw, as of last year, the ability to do an initial consent agenda, which is basically all non-controversial articles. Let's just pass them all at once. We did that last year. I thought it went pretty well. We're going to do it again this year. It has nothing to do with what's critical or not critical. If there are things we can dispose of in one shot, we'll do it. And that is a group of articles that we will group for adoption. Okay, so that's a consent agenda. We will adopt the articles that remain in that group once we go through that list. Every town meeting, regardless of COVID, that's done at every town meeting. Now, that's part one. As a result, part two, as a result of COVID, is to ask town meeting to move move certain of the articles that remain, to move certain articles to the fall town meeting. And so whether that will be by a motion to indefinitely postpone or some other parliamentary mechanism has not been settled, because there are implications for certain articles for using that particular method. So we're still working on that. Everything is, everything about this town meeting is a little bit of a work in progress. But let's say we have a group of articles that town meeting does agree to move off to the fall. What's left will be the group of articles that we will take up in the normal course. So your summary in the minutes just now had that a little bit out of order. You had the critical articles in the middle and the indefinite postponement at the end. When in fact it will be, we need to take up the question of what we're going to postpone, because if there are things that I think we should postpone, but town meeting doesn't agree, then we got to take them up in the usual course. And so that has to be the last piece. I hope that makes sense.
It does.
So that's basically it. Now that group in the middle of articles that we agree to put off, we cannot call that a consent agenda. That confuses people, because we're not grouping that article for adoption. We're grouping those articles for delay. And obviously that's a substantive difference that we have to make sure people understand. So there'll be I know people hate the long-winded monologue I give at the beginning of town meeting, but this year's is going to be especially important so people understand, what it is they're being asked to do.
When are you going to put together the two lists, the consent agenda and the ones that you're going to ask to be either definitely postponed or something else to get them to the fall?
Judy, was it something I said?
No, I'm losing power and I'm trying to plug it in. So sorry. I'm
kidding. I'm kidding. Kathy, at my request, the town administrator is in the midst of polling the sponsors of the articles that I believe could be put off. And we'd like to know the sponsors, position on that before we announce which articles are included in that group.
Okay, so you'll let us know when
See,
you
if
know.
a sponsor of an article is dead set against it, I'm most likely not going to fight them on it. They could take their chances with a room full of people wearing masks. So,
Have you talked to the sponsor, citizen sponsor of the noise bylaw article by any chance?
Yes. And let me just make sure I don't have noise and illumination confused. Yes, I have, and he's given me a preliminary indication that he's okay with it going to fall.
Okay, I'm asking because that's one we didn't get to, and so if we think we're gonna have to deal with it, we've got to do something about that. So,
Well, that's a perfect segue to the last point I need to make. Town meeting controls these decisions. Not even the article sponsors control their own articles at this point, once they're on the warrant. So the sponsor of, for example, just to use your example, the noise bylaw, Article 31, has indicated that he's okay with it going into the fall. However, if the town meeting voters don't want to put it off, they don't have to. This is their decision. So I can recommend, and the sponsors can agree, and theoretically town meeting can still say, no, we want to take that one and we're going to keep it in this town meeting. So unfortunately, I think that probably means it's important for you guys to have a position ready on everything.
okay, forewarned. Next question from me is, when are you going to have to make the final decision on the date?
Well, it's funny. We're waiting for guidance from the state about the possibility of changing, a one-time possibility of changing. I don't know the answer to your question of when. Unfortunately, it's a very fluid situation, but I don't anticipate at this point changing the date. And unless something extraordinary happens between now and June 13, we're going to go with June 13.
Okay, you bleaked out for a minute. I didn't hear what you said. Changing the what? Quorum?
Yeah, the state legislature is kicking around emergency legislation that does a few things, and one of which allows towns like ours to lower the quorum in light of the COVID situation. I can tell you, by the way, I don't mind saying so in a public meeting that I'm not inclined to do that, even if we're allowed to do it. But it's out there. Whether we'll have a definitive answer on that in time for June 13, I don't know. To be honest, I don't know what kind of crowd to expect. How people are going to feel about the things on June 13 versus how they feel about them today, versus how they felt about them a month ago. I really don't know whether we're going to have 150 people or we're going to be lucky to have 20. I have no idea.
Quick question.
Yes.
The quorum issue that the state is tossing about, is that still an all or nothing for the entire town meeting? Or would it be possible at a minimum to get just those few things passed with a smaller quorum and then just kick everything else out? Do you know what I mean?
No, I'm not quite following what you're
Well, I think, Paul, I think the quorum rule only applies to certain, like the budget and a couple other things, right?
Well, I think what you guys are thinking of, and I think I have to remind myself, but the legislation that includes lowering the quorum also includes limiting the meeting to certain types of articles.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's an and. If you're going to lower the quorum, you can only deal with certain things.
That's my understanding, and I take my direction from town council on that. There are implications for example, citizens petitions require a certain number of signatures for an annual town meeting, and require, theoretically, not theoretically, as the law is written now, they require a lot more for a special. So if citizens petitions go over to the fall, what will be required of the petitioners at that point? As of now, they may have to go back to the drawing board. So we're working hard to sort of figure out what the legislature intends for us in those kinds of scenarios. Those are questions that town council is pushing for answers to, among other things. So.
Yep. For those ones, the selectmen could always sponsor them, right? If they really got to that point.
That's been suggested. It has not been blessed.
Okay.
Just,
If they'd have to support them, they'd be ones that they would support, I would think.
well, theoretically, selectmen could sponsor an issue that they don't actually support, but they support the idea of having it.
Okay, yep, all right.
So, they could sponsor and still not be in favor, I suppose. And I'm not suggesting they're not in favor of anything. I have no idea what their positions are. So a lot of moving parts, unfortunately.
All right, are you gonna keep us posted?
Absolutely.
Are we gonna
No.
have a pre-town meeting, or Zoom pre-town meeting?
Well, we had one.
Yeah.
If probably once Mark gets his answers back from the article sponsors and we have a better sense of what the warrant's going to look like, we should do something on Zoom. I agree. And I keep saying to myself, that a lot can happen between now and then, but it is only 3 weeks away. So I will definitely keep you posted.
Okay,
Okay.
thanks, Paul.
Appreciate everybody's hard work, diligence as always. I love this group. I will leave you to it, Kathy.
All right, thank you.
Thanks,
All right,
Paul.
cheers.
All right. Kathy, I have about 1% power. I'm gonna probably have to go back to my phone. I don't know why it's not charging. So,
Okay, Judy, do
Sorry.
what you gotta do, because,
Thank
yeah,
you.
make sure, I hope you can get back home because we've got a lot of important stuff.
no, I will, one way or the other. I will.
All right, I'm sorry, I wish it worked for you.
I
It's
don't
nice
know
to
what-
see, it's nice to see your face.
Thank you.
All right, so we are going to go on to Chairman's update, although that really was part of the Chairman's update. So Claire Reynolds has reached out to me since our last meeting and said, Kathy, send me the files and I'll put them on the website for you. So she looked and she saw where it goes. The advisory has a section on the town website that we can put what we want. And what, of course, she wants to see, which is what we used to do, is to put the budget as it progresses so we can show people where things stand. So I'll give her all the budget files and she has very nicely agreed to help us get that so we can start using that, our piece of the website more, which is what we should be doing. I assume no one has an issue with her doing that?
No issue.
Nope.
Great. Mr. Purple has sent an email, I believe, yesterday to town staff asking those staff who've got some extra time because of the pandemic, some of their duties have been curtailed, to volunteer to help the various boards and committees like us with minutes. So I'm hoping we'll hear back from somebody pretty quick that will help us from this point on to at least get through the town meeting and help us with the minutes. I don't know how many of you watched the board of selectmen meeting on Tuesday. So if you did, it's just going to be doing stuff you probably already know, but just in case you did, these are.
I don't know if it's me, Kathy, but you're fading out.
Okay, how about now?
Much better.
Okay, I'm looking to my left on my other screen if you understand what I'm doing here and reading from it. See if I can do better. So they voted Tuesday to freeze all new hires until January 1st, 20. And they did it for a good reason. Now, it wasn't a unanimous vote. They voted 3-2 to do it. They did that because they want more time to be able to see what the impact of the pandemic is, especially on local revenue and local aid. We'll have the budget, the final budget will be passed hopefully by the end of June. I mean, the legislators got to do that too. So we should have a better idea in the next few months if they are going to make any changes to our local aid. Local receipts, of course, are things like car excise taxes. So we'll have a better idea in a few months too how that's been impacted by the pandemic. So that's the reason they voted to do this. It's not that they don't still support the positions that were in the budget before the pandemic. They just want to see and make sure that we don't hire someone and then have a horrible impact that we then have to turn around and lay someone off. So that's the reasoning behind it. So the budget that we're going to look at in a minute reflects those hiring freezes. So the numbers are already in there. So it reflects the 2 policemen being postponed to 1/1/20, the full-time youth and family services to 1/1/20, and the halftime IT person for Tom to be 1/1/20 also. Here's Judy.
I'm working on it.
See you twice now.
I'm-
Be
Okay.
2021.
Say
Hey,
what?
Judy, you
Did I say
can't have
20?
your
So, yeah,
phone
sorry,
on.
you're right. It's 1/1/21. She's right. She's correcting me what I said. 1/21 is when the hiring freeze is too. Okay, now, as a result of Tom LaFlamme's person possibly being postponed to 1/1/21, he has asked that $5,000 be added to his fiscal year 21 budget to give him some help during the first 6 months so that he can take some time off and whatever. So there's $5,000 has been added for that if the proposal to push his position to 1/1/21 passes. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so the Board of Selectmen also voted to approve the budget that we're about to look at. Again, that was a split vote, 3-2. And the 2 that voted no weren't voting against the budget. They just wanted to give advisory a chance to weigh in. So they just were saying, let's see what they've got to say. So it wasn't they disagree with it. They just weren't ready to vote. The schools. So both school committees have now voted new budgets for fiscal year 21 that have made pretty big changes to what we saw the last time we looked at the budget. K-8 has eliminated an additional 3.5 full-time equivalents from their budget. The budget that we had approved, or that they had approved and then we'd approved, had already eliminated 3.5. So now we've got a total of 7 that are being eliminated from the prior year in their budget that has been approved by their school committee. Algonquin has done something similar. They have now approved, they had already approved 3.6 FTE reduction in their pre-pandemic budget. They've added now another 3.9, so they've got a total 7.5 reduction FTEs in the budget that they approved last night. So both school committees have approved the budgets that are in the spreadsheet that you were sent. I've also talked to Greg Martineau, the superintendent, and he thinks that K-8 is going to return something around $100,000 to the town for fiscal year 20 because they've had less expenses because of the pandemic. So I don't remember them returning money in the last few years. So this would be the first time in a long time that they have. Algonquin, of course, is different. They're a separate district. They basically don't return money. They've got their E&D fund that any excess goes into. So it's a different story. I asked the superintendent what he thought, what he could tell me about what he thought they were going to do in the fall. And he says they're looking at 3 scenarios. The first one is totally remote learning for the fall semester. The second is something like a 40% capacity. So I guess they do shifts or they stagger people. So the school's 40% full. And the third is completely full. So I said, well, under any of those scenarios, do you think the budget that you've passed is going to be increased? And he said he didn't think so, other than option 3, which is full capacity. They might need some money for PPE. Now the state's got money for PPE because the original CARES Act included that. So he thinks they'll get reimbursed, but he said that would be the one thing that he would point out that might need some funding if the state doesn't come through. So that's all he could tell us about that. He doesn't know when the decision is going to be made. They're waiting, I guess, for Baker to weigh in on that one. So that decision has not been made, but the budget that is in the budget right now, he says, should cover all 3 scenarios. So any questions before we get to the budget? All right, so I'm going to start sharing my screen with you guys so we can talk about things while we're looking at it. So everything that I'm going to show you, you've got on your email that I sent this afternoon or sent prior to it. So you've got it if you want to pull it up on your own computer. But I'm going to share my screen so you can see it. So we're going to start with our overall Excel workbook that we've been working with all season. A couple tabs have been added to it. Okay, does everyone see a spreadsheet that starts with positive budget adjustments?
Yes.
All right, so this is the first tab on the Excel workbook that we've been using all budget season. And this has been added to basically help us understand in a snapshot what has changed since the last time we saw the budget to where we are tonight as far as the proposed budget. Okay, so I'm going to run through each one of these and just let you know that when we get down to what's in the cell of C14, which is at 160,743, we're going to discuss that in great detail separately. So we're going to go through everything else first, and then we're going to discuss that $160,000 because that is where the departments have basically revised their budget to help get down to a 2% year-over-year tax increase. Okay, so the first one is the $115,000. The library requested this be postponed to next year. We already knew this before the pandemic. This is the work that needs to be done on ceilings, painting, floors, etc. And they want to get the roof done first to make sure that what they're doing with the roof doesn't harm this. So they want to wait. So this was something the library asked to be done. So I'm just going to keep going. If you got questions, let me know. The treasurer budget. Brian Ballantyne, before the request was made to revise the budgets, withdrew his request for a half-time person, which we spent quite a bit of time, as you remember, talking about. So he has withdrawn that request. So that's that one. The next one is just moving that cost to a different pot. It's taking it out of the general fund to be paid for. It's moved over to the ambulance fund. And this is just the debt service on the fire truck that was bought 2 or 3 years ago. The next one is, you may recall that the last time we talked about Norfolk, they thought we were going to have 2 students. It ended up being 1 student, so they just reduced the budget to reflect 1 student instead of 2. The next one is the library actually voted a reduced budget. They didn't do the 2% exercise. They actually did more, which I want Judy to make sure she hears. So the library board actually just voted on a new budget. So this is their reduction of their original budget. The next one is EDC. You may recall that the EDC budget original increase year over year was pretty high compared to others. So they also did not go through the 2% exercise. They reduced theirs a lot more than 2%. So they reduced their budget to by $8,000, which gives them about a 7% year-over-year increase. And I think John Wood is in the audience, so we may talk to him in a second about that. The next one again is shifting the funding. This is one of the 2 Lucas devices. So this is now going to be paid through the ambulance fund, so it won't come out of tax dollars. All right, well, it really does, but it's coming out of money that's already been collected. So it's not going to affect the tax rate for fiscal year 21. The next number, which is why we've got such a low year-over-year increase. So this is the one that matters. So the K through 8 schools, the reduction of FTEs and other things reduced their budget exactly 2%. It was going to be a year-over-year increase of 4%. So now it's a year-over-year 2%. And that is $421,000. So that alone is over a % increase in the tax rate. And then Algonquin, same thing. They've reduced the assessment to Southborough by $160,000. So they reduced their overall budget, and that's our share of that reduction. The next one we're going to spend some time talking about separately, but just to give you an idea. So some capital has been moved to fiscal year 22. And this is the impact of that. It is the DPW vehicle, plows, trailer, and the townhouse generator. The next one is the hook truck. It's still on the list to be bought this year if it gets approved, but it's going to be the one capital item that gets considered as a special. That's the only thing that the special needs to consider is that one. And the thinking right now is that it should be bonded instead of paid for all up front. But I've got more to say on that one. So, okay, so the 160 we're going to spend a lot of time on next. That is the result of asking the departments to reduce their budgets by 2%. Okay, the next two are the impact of pushing the start dates for the IT part-time person and the two youth and family services, or excuse me, the one youth and family service full-time person to January 1st. The next one is the assessor's office. Chelsea had talked to Paul Semino about taking out of his budget the overtime that was being paid to a former employee who's now part of the police department. She was being paid overtime to come back and train her replacement. Well, the replacement has been there 9 months or so. So he agreed he didn't need that. So he took all that overtime out, which was actually a total of almost $5,000. He'd already taken a little bit of it out with the 2% exercise. This takes the rest of it out. So he kind of took it out in two places. That's that. Okay, and then the last one is, does the impact benefits of pushing the full-time youth and family services person to January 1st? Okay, so those were the positive changes to the budget. These are things that reduce expenses, the 1,384. And the things that went the other way were Brian's estimate of the impact on local receipts of the pandemic. And that impact, this is an estimate, it's not written in stone, but it's clearly going to impact the interest income we get on the bank account because interest rates have dropped pretty hard since March. Right now, the meals tax is, well, the article itself is going to be at least indefinitely postponed to the fall. I don't know there's a whole lot of appetite in passing a meals tax right now with restaurants being in as much trouble as they are, so this may not get passed, but it's at least being postponed, so we won't get the money we thought we were going to get, so we need to take that out of there. We've talked about the impact on car excise taxes. Certainly will be some impact there, and then same thing for hotels and motels. They've been partially closed, so we're not going to get the local tax on that one either. So that's just an estimate. This is not written in stone. This is Brian's best estimate of what he thinks the impact will be. So he's reduced the local receipt number that's in our budget by 165.5. Next one is similar. It's the local aid we get from the state. So he's basically reduced it by 3% from what he expects for fiscal year 20. Now, that is definitely a guess. We have no idea whether this is going to happen or not. And so this is going to be TBD. Chelsea said she read that Marlboro had reduced theirs by 15%. So it sounds like different towns are going to make different decisions as far as what to at least do as far as budget for now. But we reduced it by 3%.
Kathy, just a quick question on that one, because our local aid is going to go up next year. So it's really more discount because it's off the 2020 number, right?
Yes. Yeah, so you're right, Andrew. He took so the math was he took 3% of fiscal year 20, and that's where he got his 154. So he took fiscal year 20 and reduced it by 154.
But I think the state, what they've committed is higher than what the 20 was. So
yeah, you're right. You're right.
the actual maybe movement there is maybe more.
Yeah, and let me just look at RevCap real quick.
I think Ryan raised his hand.
All right, we'll go to Ryan just a sec. Okay, so he did do what I said. I mean, he's down to 97% of fiscal year 2020, but the impact is correct, Andrew. So that would have been 105,000. So he's got the impact right on the budget.
Okay.
That makes sense. Okay, so 154 is a good number there. Okay, let's see, the next one, $25,000. This is what is the estimated cost of adding a bathroom to the senior center, which of course they will be able to do pretty easily with it being closed. So apparently John Parent thinks he can get it done for $25,000, and I guess we do some of the work ourselves. But anyway, he says $25,000 is a good number, so they end up at least with a new bathroom for this year. Okay, the next $5,000 is what I talked about a minute ago. That's Tom Laflamme adding $5,000 to his budget to give him some help until his new person is on the payroll. And the next one is Brian Ballantyne's recently improved contractual adjustment for the fiscal year 21. It literally just got approved a few days ago, so he got to put that one in there too. So that's cool. So the net effect on the budget was a positive about $1 million. The stuff that's on down below don't affect the budget. Where they took it out, they put it back in someplace else. So you can look at those, but those all net out to zero, the funding swap. So the $1,030,000 is what they did to get the budget down to a much lower year-over-year increase. Okay. So now, does anybody have any questions about those before we go on to talk about this one?
Do you want to ask Ryan first question?
Yeah. Okay. Can you get him in, Andrew?
Yep, I'll try to do that.
Oh, there he is.
While you're doing that,
Ryan, you should be able to talk now.
Go ahead, Tim.
Thanks. Kathy, I don't think I'm gonna be your favorite person.
It's
right
okay.
That budget reduction number you have for what the trustees approved.
Yep.
That's not actually what the trustees approved. They approved a budget reduction of 7,327. That was the 2% number we were given.
Okay, do it
from
again.
Ryan.
Do it again, Ryan. 7 what?
It was 7,327.
Okay,
Okay.
I am going to fix this as we talk. Okay.
Sorry, the amount that you had was the 0% exercise, which the trustees discussed, but was not what they approved.
Okay.
so am I hearing, Kathy, that figure of 7,000 plus is actually already included in line 14?
I'll tell you what's in line 14.
I can wait until you guys get to the operating budgets and confirm that the operating budget that I have matches your figure. I just want to be clear on that sort of summary sheet that you have at the beginning, that
Okay.
isn't what the trustees did.
No, I'm glad you did because we need to get this fixed. Okay, so we've got 541,376 as your budget now. So what's the right number?
Bear with me, I'm doing everything on one screen. I've got 556,622.
555,622?
No, 556,622 should be the final number for the revised budget.
Okay, I changed it.
Sorry.
Well, not to be sorry about. Sounds like a mistake was made. Okay, so now I'm back to all these adjustments. Anybody else have a comment on anything we've talked about here? Because everything other than the 160, the capital, I don't intend to talk about again unless somebody else wants to. We're going to talk about the start dates. So we are talking about that.
Yeah, so one I had, Kathy, I think the hook lift truck, we talked about that being in the regular town meeting because they need it for snow. So I don't know if that was actually going to be moved off to the fall.
He's gonna, okay, but if he does bond it, it's still gonna affect this year because by the time he does it. All right, so let's
Hey,
keep.
Kathy,
Yes, sir.
I have questions relative to the individual budgets on this list, but my questions really, I believe, will morph back into line 14.
Yeah.
Because.
And that's
for-
that's where we're going, John. We're gonna go through each one of
Okay.
those one at a time.
Okay, fair
Like,
enough.
I'm just making sure that everything but line 14, and other than what we just talked about, which is library numbers wrong, and Andrew's right. We did talk about the hook lift truck being need to be on June 13th because you won't have time to order it for the winter. So other than that, and talking about the start date of new positions, I'm not coming back to this one. So if there's anything else you want to talk about on this one, we may talk about EDC though. So
The only thing I would say is for EDC, it's here and it's also in the 160. So I think we need to remove it from one of those sheets.
I agree.
okay, I'm not too worried about that, Chelsea, because it's not like this is carrying to this. What's carrying to this is the actual budget. So as long as we've got the right EDC budget, which we do in this, we should be okay. Okay. All this means is that we've double counted the $8,000.
I just don't want us to think it's
Okay, but stay with me. So all the impact of that is we've double counted the $8,000 in the net impact on the budget, but the budget itself is still right. It reflects the right EDC budget. Okay, and that wasn't true of
Yeah.
library. That one was wrong. Okay. All right. Okay, so we're now going to go ahead.
Can you go back to the other sheet just very briefly?
Yep.
And scroll down a little bit. I just want to point out that $5,000,
Mhm.
even with a very modest hourly rate, that's less than 2 weeks. So for all of the summer, Christmas, Thanksgiving, everything, sick time, that's probably a week and a half of coverage.
We're going to spend a lot of time on talking about that one, Tim, as far as whether we believe that that's appropriate versus starting his person at 7/1.
Okay.
Okay, that's part of that discussion. Okay. All right, now I'm going to move over to a different spreadsheet. Okay, can everyone see the one that says 2% in the upper left-hand corner?
Yes.
Here, right here? Okay, everybody got it?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so this is the one we're gonna go, okay, so let me just show you. So there's, see the 160 right there where I've got my cursor? Right there?
Yes.
Right, so that's the 160 we saw in the previous spreadsheet. So this is the impact of what we're calling the 2% budget, where the departments were asked to go back and look at the budget that had been approved and reduce it somehow, some way by 2%. And these are the departments that were asked to do it. Not everyone was. There's some exemptions, which are things that you really couldn't change. I mean, advisory. So these are the things that were exempt. They're pretty small stuff and things that you really couldn't change. So they picked up the things they thought could be changed departments, and that's the ones they asked to do this. Okay, so we're going to do this one at a time. We're going to talk about them first. I'm not going to ask for votes yet. We'll go back through them so that people have a chance to decide whether they want to support something specifically versus making a big overall vote here. Because I think we're going to have some disagreements on some of these. Okay, so I'm going to start at the top. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to say the following. You're going to see where I've got 2 in red, Recreation and Board of Selectmen. So the departments were given the leeway to decide what to reduce. There's a couple departments that the departments are really all salaries, so they had no choice but to reduce hours that people were going to work. So what they did was basically say, okay, for example, Recreation, the director is going to work, he's going to take off 28 hours and I get paid for it, and the assistant's going to take off 29 hours and I get paid for it. So they had no choice. That's all they could do. That's all that's in their budget is salaries. Board of Selectmen reduced hours for admin time by 6 hours a week. So that's pure salaries. Other than those 2, there wasn't a lot done as far as people.
Kathy, one quick question there. Are they, getting I mean, I don't think you can't work and not get paid. So they're taking.
Right, so it's unpaid leave. Yeah, so they're gonna work
Okay.
less time. So if they salary's $40,000, they're going to make, 39 instead and not work those hours.
Yeah, so they're getting unpaid vacation.
Yeah, so again, they had no choice. This is what they had to do. That's all it's in
Yeah,
their
but
budget.
your comment was they were gonna work and not get paid for it.
I didn't mean to say it that way. No, they're not gonna work and they're not gonna get paid for it.
Gotcha, okay.
All right. Okay. And then, so that first, where my cursors are, that's the reductions that were salary related. Those are the two big ones. And then this column is what else they did to come up with their reduced budget. So they tell you specifically what they did. Now, Chelsea's talked to a few of these. I've talked to a couple. So we've got a pretty good idea of what the department thinks about what they did. And so we'll share that with you too as we go through these. Okay, so civil defense was $133. They just lowered their office supplies. Personnel board, they only had to do $300. They reduced their employee development. EDC reduced their contracted services by $8,000. They still have a fairly big year-over-year increase. John Wood has told Chelsea that they need that in their contracted services because they need to pay someone to help them get the grants that they need, that they want to get. And if they get the grant, they will then return the money to the town because they can use the grant money to cover that cost. So I'm going to stop there and see if anybody has a comment on that one, and see John Wood is raising his hand. So I'm going to bring John Wood in.
Do you need me to do it?
I think I could do it now, maybe.
I'll allow him to talk. I can do it, man. All right, John, you're good.
He's in?
Yeah, I'm in. Can you hear me, everybody?
Yeah.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. How you doing? So I just want to clarify, not only is it going to be used to try to get grant money, so we've been doing a lot of looking into Route 9 and the businesses on Route 9, and we're losing business to different surrounding towns because they offer TIFs or this thing or that thing. So I'm trying to, our vacancy rate is a little bit, about 3% less than Westboro and about 10 to 15% less than Framingham. Framingham's killing us, so just as neighboring towns. So what we've been doing is we have a survey out trying to find out different things that are wrong, why we can't get the business on Route 9, why we can't retain business on Route 9. And I knew we had traffic problems. I knew we had last mile problems and septic. I never knew there was water problems as well. So we're going to try to get grants to do studies on all of these things to try to figure out what we can do to entice businesses to stay in Southborough along Route 9 instead of leaving. If we don't get the grants, we still actually need to do those studies as well. So we'd use the money for that. If we do get the grant money, it would come out of, I mean, if we hire somebody to write the grant money and we get the grants, we can pay for all the services out of the grant, like we're doing with the wastewater and stuff downtown grant money right now. I talked to Brian. I even asked him, I said, is there any way I could put an earmark for this extra money as just, to use it towards getting grants? And he said, not really. So that was that. Does anybody have any questions?
So the water problem along Route 9, and we see there were a lot of work done the last year on adding new water lines along Route 9, correct?
Correct. That's from
this-
like the Fayetteville Lights down, but towards further west, like where
Yeah.
that empty lot just before what's that, Deerfoot or Flag over on the south side of Route 9. There's no water going to that area. So
Yeah.
that was a problem that I wasn't aware of. And we've got a survey right now, and we've got a bunch of hits, but still waiting for some more. Excuse me. But my other phone was ringing. I apologize. So yeah, there's still a water problem down there, and obviously traffic problems and last mile for transit.
Any other questions for John? So just to be clear, the $8,000 is a lot more than 2%, but their year-over-year increase was a lot too. So they came down a lot more than 2%. It's just, it's still pretty big year-over-year increase.
Yeah, but if you look back over like the last 4 years from 2017,
Yeah.
I went down because that's when we were trying to account for the money for the public safety bill. And we went down from 34,693 in 2017 to 28,294 in 2018. 2019 we were 33,975, and then we hired somebody last year, so the 2020 budget was higher. We were at 38,735. So if you look to the last 5 years, it's not as steep an increase as that 7%. It would be closer to like a 3.5% overall year to year,
Okay.
which makes it a little more palatable, I hope.
Anybody else?
Kathy, I don't have a particular question to John on this reduction. I have more of a discussion or issue with the overall strategy. Do we save that to the end, or do you want to
Yeah.
bring it up as we go through individual budgets?
I think we should go through them first, Don, then we go back and talk
Okay,
about
fair enough.
overall, and then decide kind of where we want to go with it. Okay?
I will mute. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Okay, the next one is conservation. They eliminated their request for a minute taker. And of course, that problem may be solved with what I said Mark Purple's trying to do. So hopefully they'll end up with somebody who can help them take minutes. So that's what they did. They just took it out completely. The next one is the one I've got in red, recreation, which is they had no choice but just to reduce the hours for the director and assistant director as far as work hours, work paid hours. The billing department did a few things. They reduced their travel, they reduced office supplies, and they reduced their contracted services.
Kathy, on the recreation one, can they cover that with the recreation fund?
We have been told, Andrew, that if you're going to move a salary over to the revolving fund, it's got to be moved in total. That makes no sense to me. I don't know why you would have to do that. And so I keep meaning to go back and look and see why people think that. But all I can tell you right now, that's what we've been told. But I know that by rote, not because I've looked. So if you don't have to move the whole thing over, you could move a piece of it. That would be one way to do this. So it's a really good question. We need to get that answered. So I promise you I will find that out tomorrow. Okay. Enough for the moment. Keep going.
Yep, that's all right.
All right, so planning board, they're reducing some training and some dues. Town accountant, you're going to see this is a pretty common theme, is training and travel. So she reduced travel by half and training by a quarter. Now, Chelsea did talk to her about this. So Chelsea, you want to tell us what all she said?
Did we lose Chelsea?
She's got to unmute. Chelsea seems to be frozen. All right, so I'm going to give her a chance to unfreeze herself. So remember, we're going to have a new town accountant, and the process appears to be going well. They've got some qualified candidates. So they do believe on July 1st, we will have a new town accountant. Heidi is going to stay to oversee the audit and do the year-end closeout of the town finances. She told Chelsea that this is fine, that the one that she's taken out is not the critical one as far as training, but the one that should not be taken out is still in there. So Heidi was okay with this.
Okay.
Okay. Town clerk is reducing his admin by 3.5 hours per week. This is a part-time position anyway. And he's in the process of hiring a person. So if this happens, at least it's my understanding, he's not going to be reducing hours for someone that's already on the payroll. He's going to start off with the hours being reduced. Treasurer collector. So let me just make sure you can see this. Okay, so this is Brian. So he reduced training, travel, office supplies. Now, the last one we should talk about. This, I think, is actually a big deal. So he is proposing to save some money by, instead of sending 4 tax bills a year to people like we do before it's, it's sent out about a month before it's due on August 1st, November 1st, February 1st, and May 1st. He is proposing sending 3. And I said, well, why not do 2? If you're going to do 3, why not just do 2? So in other words, you get one bill on August 1st that has the coupon for August 1st and November 1st. So you got to keep it and remember it and get it paid on time. And then you do the same thing for February 1st. He says each mailing is about $800. So I believe he's saving $800 with 3, and probably would save $1,600 with 2. So I don't know what you think about that one, but I actually think that was a pretty big deal. To people are used to get their bills right before they're due. A lot of people probably pay them as soon as they come in. If you get a bill February 1st or January, say get it January 15th for the next 2, you probably aren't going to be inclined to pay the May 1st one right away. So the question is are enough people going to forget it or pay late that it's going to cause more hassle than this is worth?
Do we have any idea how that happens with escrow? I mean, most of the people are paying through escrow. So, I mean, if we sent one to a bank, would they keep all the notices for the whole year and pay them accordingly? Or do they really rely on those quarterly pieces?
There are many states that do what he's describing to do. Connecticut does it. Rhode Island does it. So my guess is escrow agents who do this for a living will probably be fine and are used to it. I'm talking about the people who aren't paying through escrow, who pay bills because they're sitting in a to be paid file, right?
I think it's a terrible idea, Kathy, but I'll wait.
Yeah, I think for $800, it might be worth it.
You think it might be worth it to do it?
Yeah, to do it. To send them, to keep sending them. I'm thinking not change it.
Right. So in other words, it's not worth it to make the change.
Correct.
That's what you're saying.
Sorry,
Awesome.
Kathy. I may have missed this because I had to switch locations. Are we talking about a July and a January bill if it were to go twice a year?
He said 3. I'm not sure which one he's picking on. I think he is picking on the May 1st one. So I think he thinks he'll send August 1st, November 1st, February 1st, and the February one, which is your, that's your real tax bill where everything is not estimated anymore. You see your valuation, and that's where they do the true up for the next 2. So I think that's the 3 that he is budgeting for, and he's going to omit the May 1st one and have the coupon being set with the February 1st one.
So it's you're prepaying.
You don't prepay it. You still pay it May 1st, but you get the voucher in January. So you've got to remember to pay it May 1st.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah, no.
I just see a lot of people saying, I forgot, and I'm not paying the interest. That's not fair. And I
Yeah,
think you'll end up, spending more than $800 a time trying to deal with the issues it causes.
Yeah, and Kathy, a lot of seniors in particular in town are very structured and religiously pay their bills upon receipt.
Yep.
And if they're going to receive 2 quarter tax bills at once, that's, even though they're not due, that's going to cause a lot of angst and anxiety. And if it's for $800, I'm not sure it's worth it.
Brian said to me when I talked to him about it that they did this before and it did not work out well.
And let's not do it.
Tim, Judy?
Yeah, can you hear me before I say anything?
Yep.
Oh, good. Okay. Yeah, I think we shouldn't do it either.
That's definitive. Tim?
I kind of don't want to tell them how to run their department, although I don't disagree with anything you've said.
I feel like this is something that is within our purview. Because it really does affect all taxpayers. So I'm okay with us recommending that they not do this and not approving the budget reduction for it. In other words, we put the money back in his budget.
Kathy, how much are we forecasted to spend in advisory this year?
Our budget,
Yeah,
our little budget.
I mean, our little budget, we had minute takers for everything, but I'm just
Yeah,
thinking,
so maybe half of it.
we could probably cough up $800 out of our budget and cover it.
Well, this is our budget for next year, right? And we don't know what we're doing about minutes. We think we're going to have somebody from the town help us for the first few months, right? So
Yeah.
you're probably right. We always have money left over in the advisory budget. So we could ask them to reduce our budget and move it over to treasurers. We could do that.
I don't know, just a thought.
It sounds like it's, if I interpret what everybody said, is 5 people believe this is not a great idea. And 1 person doesn't disagree with that, but prefers that we not ask them not to do that because it's not part of what we should do. So that's a pretty hefty majority there. So we're not voting right this moment, but I think we got the flavor of that one. So we'll come back to it.
I certainly won't disagree with increasing the budget by $800.
All right, and then, so you're saying do that and just don't tell them what to do with it. And we hope that they'll,
I don't think, a suggestion is harmful.
okay, all right.
I mean, I agree. I don't think it's going to go over well with the seniors in town. At the same time, if any opportunities to eliminate waste is something that could be pursued.
I don't think it's just seniors. I think people are busy, and I can tell you in my office, we pay a lot of bills for people and have for years and years and years, and we've missed it when we've had to pay Connecticut and Rhode Island because we didn't have the coupons sitting there ready to be paid. So I think it's easy to miss. I don't care how old you are. And I think people will be mad if they get a late notice, and the interest rate on late tax bills is pretty steep. So I think that will cause Brian more headache than what we're saying. He just had no choice. He said, I wasn't going to reduce my staff. I didn't get my half person, so I'm not reducing my staff. That's the only place I could go. So that's why he did it. He doesn't necessarily want to do this, is my point. He just did it because he had no choice. Okay.
Understood.
Right. Okay, let me keep going. So we've already talked about the assessor. So what he did is he just took the overtime hours out for his former employee that's now at the police department. He agrees. The new one has been trained. She's doing fine, so he did not need it. So he very willingly took that out, and that actually was a pretty good savings. That was $5,000. So
that's the full overtime, is what you're saying.
Yeah, he took the whole thing out.
But not in this line item though. So
It's in 2 parts.
to achieve his 2% was 100 hours less 37, and then on the other sheet was the extra 37, which was like $1,700 or $1,900.
All right, so family and youth services. So they took out contracted services and mileage. That's where they got their cut.
And by contracted services, they mean what?
Chelsea, do you know? I don't know what their contracted services.
I mean, is it services to the community?
All right, let's see. I believe Sue Becca is watching this. It says Paul, but I think it's Sue. I guess we'll find out. Yeah, I think it's Sue. So Sue, can you hear us?
She's muted. Let me unmute her. There you go. Yeah, she's muted on her end.
Sue, you're muted if you can unmute yourself.
Hello?
Hey,
Hey. Those services are for town services. They tried to, we had a meeting and we did this exercise with the 2% and 4%. I didn't realize that if we did the 2%, that would bump us out and we couldn't possibly get a full-time admin until January.
That's unrelated, Sue, so it didn't do that. So in other words, they wanted you to take your budget that had been approved and just reduce it by 2%.
Right.
And so it doesn't have, so in other words, your budget's gone down for two reasons. It's because they moved the person to January and because of your 2% exercise.
Okay.
Okay, so what contracted services will you not be able to get because of this 30%? Do you know?
I wish Sarah could be on this call for that. And she had another meeting at 6, so she couldn't be on this call. I can get you that information, but it's all town residents services. It's going to the schools, and they were doing actually counseling at the schools too, and maybe having to pull that back, which isn't convenient either for some of these kids to have to go to her office. And right now she's doing everything online, obviously. So before I say anything that I shouldn't, I'd like to check with her about that and get back to you.
Okay. So will you do that? Because contracted services, that doesn't sound like contracted services to me, unless you've got someone that you're contracting with to do that.
Okay, I will talk to her tonight.
Okay.
And see if I can get back to you. Maybe during this meeting, so I can come back in.
All right, so raise your hand if you get it, and we'll get you back in.
I will do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so next one is Council on Aging. So they reduced some travel and some furniture that we're going to replace in their annual conference. Chelsea, you didn't talk to them, did you?
I did not.
Hey, Kathy, again, my question, I believe the annual conference is an event whereby they receive some training associated with the conference. And if that's correct, I think we should be careful reducing training across the board. Again, it will loop into more my overall philosophy of this exercise.
Okay. Understood. Okay, this is MIS, so Tom is listening, so if he needs to intervene, he will interject. So he's reduced training by a lot. And then he's upgrade for, and I don't know what Polcom is. Polcom is the recording is eliminated. So that's what he did to get, he took out $4,500. So Tom, can you unmute and join us and just tell us what Polcom is?
Yes, that is the recording system for the police dispatch. And there was a plan to upgrade it. It is currently working, but we were trying to tie it in a slightly better way. That's all. So that can be deferred a year without any impact.
What about your training?
You know, at this point, not knowing what training is going to be available, you know, that's where the reduction was chosen to come from.
So it wasn't necessarily training of the new person?
No. That was attendance of classes on various potential technology.
So you're okay with both of those?
Yes.
All right, Board of Selectmen, they did a couple things. So they did reduce hours for their admin time by 6 hours a week. And the other one, I'm not sure what it is, but given this is Brian and Mark, I assume they're okay with that one. So they said they had some redundancy with whatever they were going to do.
Kathy, I'm sorry, are we limiting ourselves just to the 2% cut, or can we discuss the department's budget in general?
Well, Well, we can go back and discuss it, but we had already gone through all the budgets when the pandemic hit. So if you want to reopen, we can. So right now, we're discussing the change to those budgets, Tim. But if you want to talk about the overall budget, we can certainly do that.
I don't want to do that unless the group wants to.
Yeah, I do want to do that because one of my concerns is that we sharpened our pencils as tight as we could. And we asked the departments to sharpen their pencils as tight as they could. And we approved their budget. And I understand the rationale behind doing the exercise, given the state that we are in now. But those of you who probably have had the misfortune of hearing me on budget issues over the last decade, I'm very reluctant to look at one year's budget in a vacuum. And because of its impact on the upcoming years. And I'm very concerned about that. So Tim, I agree. I don't know if that's where you were going insofar as we've gone through this exercise and now we're going through it again and reducing it. So I do think we should talk about those budgets again.
And we will, and just a quick comment on what John just said. A lot of the things you see being reduced here, I don't think have a carry forward effect on future years. Now, it may be that, no, I take it back. When work starts on fiscal year 22, is the starting point going to be this reduced budget or what the budget would have been without the pandemic, so that they're allowed to go back and restore the stuff and then increase on top of that? So actually, it is a very good question. Okay, so I still just want to get through these and we're going back and talk about them. The next one is public buildings. So they reduced electrician by 4.5 hours.
Kathy, can I ask a question about the selectmen
Yep.
budget?
Yep.
6 hours a week, so that's 312 hours a year.
Yep.
Is that spread across salaries? Is that focused on individual? How is that being accomplished?
There's 4 people on the payroll for the board of selectmen. 2 are considered admins, so it obviously affects those 2 people, and I don't know how it affects them.
Okay. That's a question I think that I'd like to know the answer to.
Okay, and if I scroll down, just so you know, there is 1,035 hours that are being impacted here in total, and that of course is a third of it, or almost a third.
Say that again, Kathy, I'm sorry.
See where my cursor is? So if you add up all the hours that are being reduced with this 2% cut, it's 1,035 hours of staff time in total.
Understood. Sorry.
Okay, so now back to line 19. So this is public buildings. This is John Parent. So he has cut 4.5 hours per week of a part-time electrician.
Do we know what that impact is in terms of electrician needs for the town?
I don't. Let me see if he is in the audience.
And the reason I asked Pat, not to be a pain in the ass, but I'm just not sure how I can vote to support or not support unless I know we'll get back into the budgets as Tim asked about.
All right, Brian Ballantyne is in the audience. I'm going to ask him to see if he can give us some more information on that one.
Hello,
Hi,
you're there.
we are.
Okay. So I'm sorry, I was typing an email. John, was your question in regard to the electrician?
Electrician and John Parent's budget.
Yeah, yeah, just in terms of 4.5 hours a week, not having an electrician available, its impact on the town.
So I did speak to John quickly about this, and he wasn't in a panic about it. A lot of the electricians' work comes in spurts or projects or all at once. So it's not like it's weekly. It's not like he has a weekly schedule that's exactly the same. Actually, he kind of works, he works very uneven hours at sometimes. So John felt, looking at the next year ahead and with the projects he has on his list, that he could manage it. Again, it's not ideal, but I'm sure you're going to hear that again and again. But he's not. I guess the bottom line, it's to give you a level of comfort. He was okay with it.
And that's 4.5 hours per week, correct, Brian?
Correct. Correct.
Anyone have any other question for Brian while he's on? As far as that one goes? Okay, moving on. So the library we have talked about. Let's see if Brian is still here. Yeah, he is. So they did not reduce their budget by more than 2%. They required 2%. So why don't we ask Brian to come back in and let us know. Give us some more details of what they did.
Kathy,
Yeah,
can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I talked to him today. There's so much in their budget that they have no control over, because in order to be in the library system. He said his cut was in programming, primarily in programming, which is a loss because that's a place people go to see programs, but that's where the cut went.
and it looks like, Judy, they may thought they had some excess in fiscal year 20. I mean, they're closed, right? So it looks like they may have moved some things back to fiscal year 20 because they knew they had some cushion there.
Yeah, I'm not looking at, because I'm hamstrung, I'm not looking at his budget, but that's how he explained it, because I called and asked him. And he seemed to think it would be, they were able to do this without too much pain. You know, as I listen to this, I keep thinking about what you said at the end of the last meeting, which was, is this kind of cut something that we really need to do to save the average house owner was $200 something. And if we do this across the board, certainly it's going to impact. I'm sure it is. And maybe we need to really ask that question. I thought it was an important one. So there you go.
I think it is to remember Brian and Mark just did what they were asked to do. The board of selectmen asked them to do this, go through this exercise. And obviously cuts can hurt some more than others, right? I mean, it clearly hurt rec a lot to do this. So some have more room to make some cuts. They've got bigger budgets, or they've got, maybe they've got some things in there that they're not wedded to. But some clearly just had to cut what they had, which was salaries.
Yeah, but Kathy, it's at least I don't put this in the optic of hurting the budgets. I put this in the optic of decreasing the level of services to the community.
That's better.
I think it's that they're two very different things.
Okay.
And there's another aspect that bothers me about this, and that's I would be very surprised moving forward if any department didn't have a large chunk of training and travel in their budgets just permanently now. Because you can see that the departments that have training and travel have not cut people. And that's a lesson that managers are going to learn, that if they pad their budget, then they won't have to go through this again. And I think that is something that's going to lead to rising costs over the next few years.
So
Yeah,
Tim,
and I
say
think
that
for that-
again. You
So,
think, okay.
Let's just, I'm not picking on the town clerk. I'm just going to look at row 12. If the town clerk had put an extra 10,000 of training in his budget, then the town clerk would not have to tell the admin that they're reducing their hours every week. If the assessor, let's not look at the assessor. Let's look at public building facilities. If there was training in that budget, then you'd see that training was cut and the electrician wouldn't be. This is, I mean, this we're teaching our department heads to put more fluff in their budget so that their people aren't impacted in the future. And ultimately, I think this exercise is going to hurt us more than it's helping us this year.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with Tim. I think that this is a little bit flawed from the beginning, just do a blanket, this is the percent you need to cut versus saying, listen, we're in a pandemic. People aren't traveling, probably not till Q3, maybe even Q4. So we're going to have less travel. We're going to have less programs because people can't go to the library until, I don't know, September forecast. I don't know, something like that. We should be looking at what are the reductions in our budget that would be affected by the pandemic. And then if we want to layer a little bit on top of that, but it didn't seem like that exercise was done.
So, I mean, I can just very quickly say, with regards to the cuts that I made, I guess as sort of an example department head, is like, I did not completely reduce travel expenditures. I did not completely reduce professional development. What I looked at doing as part of this exercise was going back to level funding from the prior year budget. And that was really, I mean, again, I take all your comments. I see what you're saying. I really did try to preserve the salaries in particular. And with our case, you know, we have this new teen room that we're attempting to staff. So that was sort of, staffing had to be kind of a priority for me budgetarily. And then with programs, you know, that did take the biggest hit as far as the cuts we did. And that was mainly because we don't know what the status of programs is going to be for the remainder of the year. I mean, definitely not the same as we were planning.
But to me, that's in line with what Andrew just said. You actually made a cut, a reduction, because of the impact of the pandemic on the library. There's something you really can't do because of it. So that to me is a legitimate reduction. You know, restore it when everything is back open again, but that to me is the better way to do this too. So I'm parroting what Andrew said, which is look for things that really are impacted by the virus and reduce them. If you really can't travel, if you really can't open the library and there's some programs you can't do them all online, and yeah, then those should be reduced rather than this arbitrary 2% cut.
And to layer on that, I think, you know, increasing recreation's budget, because outdoor activities are one of the only things people are going to be able to do this summer, is warranted. Things of that nature, things of, you know, looking at this for the next at least quarter or two and saying, what does this world look like? You know, can people go to the library? Do we, you know, go back and look at it from, okay, you know, the digital library stuff, is that a switch we should move to make? Because this starts July 1st. So this is now. So how do we deploy our capital in July to give the most services to the town, regardless of what we've done in the past and what we looked at in January? Let's look at how we can deploy our capital to give the most services to people in this time, while still remaining as efficiently as possible.
So Andrew, the town is not going to do the camps this summer. They've been canceled. We know that for a fact. Whether they do the RAP programs in the fall probably depends on what the school decides to do as far as that. So rec may be, you're right, doing something different because of what's going on with them. So Ryan.
And I see Tom had a question too, so I don't know if you want to get to Tom.
Let me just ask Ryan one more question. So Ryan, the 7367 reduction, do you believe that it in large part reflects substantive reductions in things because of the pandemic, or is there a lot of arbitrariness in that number?
No, it's definitely reflective of the pandemic. It's a direct result of that. That was really where the cuts came from.
All right, so you're okay with it, in other words, and your board's okay with it?
And we discussed it, and I think that they even wanted to discuss the original budget and have the discussion of whether or not it was a year to kind of defend this. And I mean, that wasn't my advice. Looking at things, I think the 2% makes sense. I would say about half the money we cut was programming based. And that was really with the idea that we had a robust fall and spring programming schedule. You know, the fall is definitely going to look radically different. So I don't know about the spring, but we're also looking, I was also trying to take the pressure off me applying for grants and a little bit, just because that is primarily what we've done to support programming. And, I don't know what the status of any of that is going to be, but I I have for the past several years tried to find creative solutions for programming money at the library, and I'll continue that, you know?
So based on what you know now, you think you've got enough money in your budget to provide whatever version of the programs that you can provide to people, that you're not hamstrung?
I mean, this isn't ideal, I would say, right? I think what Brian said before, you know, this wasn't the plan, but we're not in that reality anymore, right? So, you know, we do still have $800 that's in there that funds I always sort of joke and say it's 2.5 programs, you know, because we usually have vendors that come in and provide a program for about $200 or $300. So I always got to talk somebody into a discount, right? To use the remainder of the money. So that, you know, those would be programs we do in the spring, I would say.
Anybody else?
Nope, I think I'm good on the library.
All
What,
right.
see what Tom had to say?
Oh, sorry, no, it's Tom now. So Tom, can you let
Thank
yourself
you.
in?
Yeah, so I just wanted to comment on the decision to cut training. That was not an easy decision. I do count on training. However, when I look at the rest of the budget, a lot of it is fixed or would significantly impact service. You know, I prioritized adding the staff person as a value add for coverage and you know, the increased capabilities of technology by having that additional staff over just trying to do training for myself, you know, which I don't always have time to do without that coverage. So to just say that it's an easy thing to cut and you know, that departments will start padding, I don't think that is the case. I think
Let me clarify, Tom.
what's that?
Let me clarify.
Yeah.
When you have a choice between cutting training and cutting people, it's a very easy decision for a manager.
Well,
Nobody cuts their staff, particularly in hard times when finding employment is difficult. Nobody wants to cut hours. Nobody wants to impact people. That's the point I was making. For the departments here, and we're really looking at, you know, column I, where the hours have been reduced. These are the department managers who are really feeling the pain right now. And there's no coincidence that the departments that are cutting hours are doing that because they don't have anything in column J to cut. You have a big red none. So that's the point I'm trying to drive home for the future, is that column J is going to start getting a lot bigger because people don't want to have to cut into column I. And there's nothing worse than telling somebody, I'm sorry, you can't work for me anymore. Right? Go home to your family and break the bad news.
Or you got to work 10 hours less because of this, you know?
Right.
Yeah. Kathy,
Okay.
is this a good opportunity to talk about tech and IT while we have, or do you not want to get into it?
Well, explain to me what you want to talk about before you answer the question. You want to talk about tech and IT?
So-
It's just a,
So my concern with Tom is that with this pandemic, he's spending a lot of time doing Zoom calls and we're relying heavily on technology. And I think it has to do with the resource, that this isn't the area at which we cut. And I'm more in favor of giving him even more resources in this pandemic phase, to give him an entirely full-time, starting almost even immediately, but July 1st.
we're definitely going to talk about that, Andrew, as far
Okay.
as his specific person. So we're going to come back to the start dates separately.
Yep, that's
Okay,
fine.
so let's finish up these last three. So, and these are the big three, of course. This is fire, police, and DPW. Okay, so fire is they reduced $30,000 on a already tight budget. So he did training, tuition, parts, miscellaneous, and I don't know what risk for shortages means. So I guess he's saying that if they do the parts there, they may run out of things. So $30,000 of,
And
that kind of
Kathy, if I recall correctly, and I may be mistaken, but the chief had already indicated to us that the training line item on his previous budget was pretty much bare bones. And reducing that training bare bone by 50%, again, is troubling to me.
But I think it's that the overtime coverage for the people to go do training. Right? It's paying people, like doing paid training.
Well, it's under the notes, it says training and tuition, 50%. I'm not sure what parts and miscellaneous is, but.
well, if you look under I, he definitely, so I think Andrew's right. He's talking about having to, so he is reducing his overtime coverage for the people going to do the trainings. That's how, so this impacts people. It reduces the overtime they would have been paid.
Does it impact the percentage of training that they'll be allowed to undertake?
Yeah, because he's saying he's going to reduce the
Yeah.
training, and the consequence of that is he doesn't have to pay as much
Okay.
overtime for the replacement. So
Well,
yes.
I think we're saying the same thing, Andrew, aren't we? Essentially?
Yep, I'm just saying it's coming out of two buckets.
Right, okay.
All right, so that's him.
Or people can do training, unpaid training. We pay for because a lot of the training I think is free. It's just they're not paying for the time. They'd have to do it on their own time. Because I think right now he splits it. They pay at 50% and he pays 50%, but maybe there's more training available if they do it on their own time. Not that they should have to do that. I'm just saying they might still be able to do so.
Okay, police is maintaining vehicles, travel, and computer repairs.
Why are the police paying for computer repairs?
I don't know. That was my question too, Tim. That's a sensor. So maybe Tom will pop back on. So I'm surprised that they even have a line item for it.
Right.
So I'll pull up their budget in a second and look at the details of it. So that's what he says. So again, they had to do this. So they had to pick something, right? So this is what they picked. DPW, she reduced temporary. So she did do she reduced temporary help.
Kathy, one question I had is why was there a decision made that the delaying of people didn't count towards their 2%?
I don't know.
Okay. Seems like a double whammy, especially for the police.
Well, I tell you, I think it's probably the timing. They were asked to do the 2%, then they started thinking about delaying. So they did that first, and then they decided to delay. So if they had decided to delay first, they might not have had those departments. They may have let them include that in their 2%. But I think it's probably in the order that they asked people to do things. Okay, now I just want to show you something. Okay, so this $160,000 will affect the tax rate by 40 basis points. Okay, so let's go back to.
Kathy, can you also tell us how that translate into individual taxpayer bill increase?
Yes, I will. Okay, so this is where we are. See where my cursor is? This is where we are right now after I made the library fix. So it's a 0.86% year-over-year increase, which the average homeowner, which is a house worth $634,000, would pay $91. Okay. Now, if I go down here and just arbitrarily increase the town budget by $160,000. Should go up about 0.4%. And it did. Okay, so if you knocked out every bit of that $160,000, you still would have a 1.22% year-over-year increase.
So that $160,000 translates into an approximate $35 a year increase per homeowner?
Correct. Okay, so yeah. So 129 versus, and I'm going to take it back out for a moment. Yeah, so it goes from 91 to 129, so 9 and 29. So yeah, $38 if you took everybody out and said, we don't support any of it. So it's not a very big impact at all.
But it's an impact in terms of what we're asking the departments to do.
Yeah, you could conclude, Judy, the impact on them is much greater than the benefit. Yeah. Okay. But you might not. I'm trying to just be objective for the moment. Okay. Okay, so we've got to, between probably this week, next week, come to a conclusion on what we want to recommend, because the Board of Selectmen is interested and they want to finalize their, so they've voted, but they're willing to reopen it if there's anything that they believe they should reopen it for. I don't think anybody's listening tonight. Sam is.
Kathy, do you
Yeah.
know whether or not they knew that without this 2% cut, it's only a $38 a year increase per resident? Did they specifically understand, or was that calculated for them as we're doing here?
I don't know, John. I don't remember that being on the slides that were shown on Tuesday, so I don't know whether they actually, did their own computation outside that meeting to see what it was. I can tell you what they were getting, where their disagreements were. Two members, Mr. Stivers and Mr. Clinda, are adamant that they want to see the Youth and Family Service and the policeman start July 1st. And I'm sure they want Tom LaFlame too, but they didn't talk as much about Tom. They were really, Mr. Clinton was really, really adamant that he wants Youth and Family to start July 1st. So they spent a lot of time talking about that. They did not spend much time that I saw talking about the details that we just did. Maybe they did it, separately and before the meeting, but they didn't spend a lot of time as a group talking about the $160,000.
I just think because we went through the exercise of all the individual departmental budgets and came upon essentially near unanimous votes prior to this 2% exercise, if the 2% exercise results in a increase in $38 per year, which you divide that by 4 for each quarter, is even less. I mean, maybe I'm alone on this, but my sense is that the work we did initially and asked the department heads to do initially in sharpening their pencils, I'm inclined to go back to where they were, at least unless someone can convince me otherwise. I just don't see that 2% as that much of an increase. Or
Yeah, John, I would tend to agree. The only exception I would say is taking a look and saying, okay, what departments in this pandemic might need more budget and who doesn't need quite as much? If we're not going to do programming for a quarter or something, or people can't open, whatever, a gym or something, I don't know, for a quarter, how much less do they need for that, and redeploying it elsewhere that the town can use? But I think that I was fine with the budget before, but here we are.
I agree with John too, completely.
So let me make a philosophical comment. If we were to vote to not support the $160,000 in cuts, or at least the piece of it that looks like it's arbitrary, if you can separate it out in two pots, right? The pieces that clearly should be reduced because they're pandemic related and they're not going to spend the money. And there is a piece of it that's in there for that. I don't know what it is. That means that the entire reduction in the budget that we've seen since we met last is all on the schools. The schools already had a low budget. Without the schools, we would have a horrible year-over-year increase for this year. The town is up, what, 6% still? And the schools are now, I mean, it's really low.
Kathy, if I can make a suggestion, maybe we go through the adjustments, kind of vote, or just get a consensus about which ones of those. I mean, I think we all agree the EDC one makes sense, the reduction there, or some of the other ones that we all had kind of voted on. The school one might, that's a huge number. I might want to hear from the superintendent and see, is that because of the pandemic and they're not forecasting that they're going to be doing stuff over the summer, or is that again just to get to
no.
the 2%?
That's not true. That can't be true, Andrew. They don't know what they're doing. So they don't know
Yeah.
where they end up in the fall. They looked at it and they did say they felt that it was appropriate to reduce. They moved people around, just so you know. They had a person. So some of this is attrition too. It's not all people. In fact, I think quite a bit of it is attrition, where someone's retired. So rather than replace them, they replaced them either with a halftime person or something else. They move people around. And he said that they felt very comfortable with what they did. So I'm not sure you want to reopen that. I mean, this is a school.
No, I
committee
think
decision.
I think if he's comfortable with that, I'm fine with that. I didn't hear that message yet.
No, when I talked to him, he was very comfortable with it. And he said they looked at what it did to the teacher versus student ratio. They said it's still well within their limits. So they seem to have done this without a whole lot of pain.
Okay.
I know Judy's always.
Yeah, I
Marcus
was
and
going to
Lisa.
ask you,
Yeah.
did he talk about laying off tenured faculty, anything like that?
No, and Judy, I would tell you this, he told me about every one of them, but it was hard to follow as far as how they're shuffling people. They got rid of one program and K through 8 that's moving to Algonquin, so that they got to cut that, right? Because the program's moving. So it didn't sound like there is a lot of tenured teachers that are going to be affected here.
If there's any, it's important.
Yeah, and I'm not sure they even have names attached to these yet. They've just decided that they've got the room to do this. But again, going back to this, I mean, that's your big numbers right there. Those two.
But I think we still need to keep in mind that we are entering a period of unknowns, and we don't know when programs are going to be back up and running in the capacity that they were, or some capacity. And I think we need to try to reallocate resources as necessary, and maybe not increase certain departments' budgets if other departments have capacity to take on some of that area's work. So I think that's what I'm focused on, maybe not to a particular number. But I do think that there is value in looking at what the 2% suggestions were. And to go back to kind of the training and conference travel discussion, I would like to see that we have some fiscal discipline around how we spend any money that's allocated for that. And that, with travel and conferences getting reduced for next year, at least that's what it sounds like is going to happen, that we have a policy around spending any of that allocated budget and not spend it somewhere else if it's not used.
Well, we're getting pretty late to get this done, but a different instruction would have been to take a look at your budget and try to pandemic it. Take a look at what you really won't spend because of the pandemic, or vice versa, something you need to spend. And that's not what they were asked to do. So there probably is conferences and travel that won't take place because of the pandemic, but they weren't asked to identify those. They were just asked to cut 2%.
Mm-hmm.
But if that 2% is added back in, then please correct me if I'm wrong, because math has never been my strength. If that 2% is factored back in, that results in a $9.50 increase in the quarterly tax bill.
That is correct.
And
All
3
right.
selectmen were.
Well, not really, Kathy, because that's
Okay.
just for the operational budget. That doesn't include the schools, right?
No,
That's
it's not, no.
160K, not the.
No, it's all in there. So Andrea, I'm looking at this. All I did was add 160K in to the town side, and that's what it does to the budget. So the schools are in there at this point. Did I answer your question?
I think so.
So this budget right now reflects everything we've just talked about. It's in there. This is what the impact of making all those cuts right here is in those additions. That's all in here.
I guess I'd like to understand the selectmen's mindset as to the significance of that 950 per quarter decrease, and whether or not that's the type of analysis that they did.
All right, Sam is watching, so we'll get him in here in a second. He's the only one I see watching. So Andrew, if you go down and look at the schools, so this number is basically all schools. That's why it's only up 0.8%, because this reflects going down to 2% for K through 8 and the reduced assessment for Algonquin. Okay, so I still say what John said is correct, and I want you to agree, make sure you agree. All I did was change this for the moment. I just added back the $160,000 right there, just arbitrarily, and it went up to.
But the 160 there doesn't have the schools in it.
Yes, it does. But it doesn't matter. The schools are in the total here. I mean, we're still dealing with the
Yeah,
total.
yeah, but I'm saying that the $38 was just the 160.
No. Yes, the 160 is the impact of increasing the budget by $160,000. Does that make sense?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
so-
But that's from the 2% of the things that are on that other spreadsheet,
Yeah, I agree.
which
So,
doesn't include the schools.
no, we're not.
So I'm
talking
just saying
about-
the 2% impact that John's talking about is really 600 or 700K, not.
I'm not talking, no, so you're right. I'm talking about the town side of the 2%. How about that?
Correct. The town operational side of the 2% is that piece.
Yes.
But if you took away the exercise that the
No, that'd be a
selectmen are
much,
asking
that's a
for,
much bigger number. No,
it
no.
would be a much bigger number because of schools. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm not talking about changing schools. The school committees have voted and seem to be fine with what they have voted. I had asked the question whether any of the three scenarios would increase his budget, and that he said he didn't think so, other than possibly PPE purchases, and he thinks those are going to be covered by the state.
So are we thinking like a hybrid 2%, like keep the schools, but kind of adjust some of the operational budgets a little bit?
I don't think we know what we think yet. I think we know we've got a problem with at least some of these. Now, let's go ahead and talk about the positions and decide what we think there too, because that also affects this. So let's start with Tom LaFlamme's halftime person that we thought he so desperately needed, that we thought he needed more, is now being pushed another 6 months when he is kind of the key to keeping this town going right now as far as operating. So I heard Dan Kalinda talk about, and maybe Mr. Cybers talk about youth and family services. This was a safety issue. And we'll talk about that in a second. It could be. There's a couple things going on there that do affect them. And the police is a safety issue. Well, I'd say that maybe Tom LaFlamme is even more important to the town right now than even those two, because of what we are relying on him to do. Because without what he does, we can't do what we're doing right now.
Yep. And I would agree, in a pandemic, the police would be great if we had officers off the street, but they're not going to be here for a year until they get trained. So
Yeah, and he's going to cover that
help
shift,
with
just so he's already told Chelsea, he's still going to cover that third shift with overtime. So it's not like he's going to be a short person. He's got a plan to cover it if he gets delayed. So he's got a plan to get him to where he was going to be, assuming he doesn't lose people that he's not expecting to.
yeah, and the police was already delayed, if I remember correctly, till October or so when the schools, whatever, the academies were open, right? It wasn't, the person wasn't really going to start July 1st.
So it was delayed till September because that would be with the academy schedule.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Kathy, do you want to talk about police or you want to talk about IT?
I will stay on IT first. I think that's maybe the easier of the three. Okay, anybody want to weigh in on, make a case against? I mean, I would absolutely vote for Tom to get his person July 1st. First of all, it's not a complete dollar for dollar change because he's got $5,000 in there that he can take back out because now he's got his person. So I think it's about a $10,000 change to his budget, and he's already got 5 in there, so it's a $5,000 change to his budget if we were to say hire your person July 1st.
So I'm going to weigh in on that, Kathy.
Go ahead.
This part-time person we're talking about is compared to Tom, is a fairly junior person who's going to do desktop support. This type of resource is in no way, shape, or form going to give Tom backup outside of desktop support. And all of the other functions in that a typical CIO's world would have, this part-time resource is not going to be able to cover it. So if we're talking about the risk to having a one-person IT department, the only way to solve that is for an immediate full-time hire. I really want to make it clear that this part-time hire it's going to help Tom maybe take vacation here or there, short-term, very short-term coverage. But if something significant happens, we need Tom back.
Yeah, but I don't disagree with you, Tim, but the assistant person could be doing this meeting right now, so Tom's not sitting at home at 8 o'clock at night monitoring this, which is what he's doing right now.
True,
I
but
mean, do we want to?
there's a lot
I'd like to
more
hear
that
from
goes to it.
Tom. I'd love to hear from Tom to see whether or not, Tom, in this pandemic, with all the Zoom meetings and all the technology that we need to keep everything running, does that change your position on full-time versus part-time and immediate hire? I am fully supportive of a full-time person if that's what we need for this kind of pandemic. I would love to hear from him if he would be willing to talk.
So as far as the meeting coverage, I do have 3 other staff members that have been covering meetings as well, and I am looking to train more people how to do that. So it's not necessarily the staff meetings that are the big issue. It is. I am still getting help desk requests, even though people are working from home. So there's still pieces that need to be addressed. And that coverage is what would allow me to be able to do some of the other larger projects and initiatives that could move the town forward. So, I do feel that a part-timer will give relief and benefit. I've had the discussion with many people that there's always going to be IT work, but and I think I said this when I met with advisory to review the budget initially, that I went with the fiscally responsible next step of asking for a part-time person. It wasn't directed to only do part-time. At the time, that was what I felt would at least move the department forward.
Okay, so Tom, you're comfortable with the part-time and you don't think in this situation you would need to upgrade that to a full-time?
Again, there's arguments to be made both ways. So to Tim's point, yeah, it would be a much more junior person. But I do believe after having been in that junior position, people can be trained up to provide, I'm not going to say 6-month coverage, but certainly a week or 2 easily that they can cover what comes up. So I do think that part-time is still appropriate, especially given the financial aspect of where we're at. So, again, I can go either way.
There is a tremendous amount of risk here. I want people to understand. If Tom gets sick from COVID, I hope you don't, Tom, God bless. And the network goes down, nobody in the town's going to be able to fix that. If a server goes down, if the new budget software goes down, none of these part-time people are going to be able to help. I mean, being able to cover a Zoom call is a low-level activity for a senior IT person. And when you look at senior IT skill sets, we have exactly one person in this town who has them. I'm not going to push it anymore. I just want to be really clear with everybody that a part-time resource will help Tom from the perspective of letting him go to training or letting him go on vacation here or there. But if you want to have any kind of sense of relief that the town is covered You need a full-time resource,
Senior resource.
senior resource, that's right. I mean, not at Tom's level, but it's a different caliber of hire.
So
Yep,
Tom,
and-
do you
and Tom,
agree?
budget aside, in a perfect world, with all the money in the world, is that what you would be looking for?
I think in an ideal world, then yes. You know, you make a very good point. You know, the skill set is much different. You know, you can get someone that is up to speed with network or GIS. You know, you can get a specialist. You know, may or may not get that with part-time. You know, I can't guarantee, but you know, it may be someone that has interest and can learn. You know, that's what I'm hoping, is that it's someone that has a specific interest, can take on projects and learn and grow professionally. So
Anybody else?
I agree with all Tim's points. I think it is extremely risky to not have a Tom backup, especially where every other department in town relies on that support. So I do see the value in it. I think I am concerned about the sustainability of it into FY22, given what we're facing in a year from now. That would, I mean, in an ideal world, I think we should be looking to have somebody that could fill in for Tom, regardless of what it is.
Anybody else before we go on to Youth and Family Services?
can I just throw in one more quick wrinkle on the part-time versus full-time? The SAP currently has a part-time position, but not a full-time position. So, you know, that would be something that would have to be addressed if you were to suggest something that other than what I had requested. So,
All right, good point. Good technical point. Okay. All right, so let's talk about Youth and Family Services. So as you know, we never agreed as a group, a formal vote where we had all 7 people there as far as whether we actually supported the full-time person to begin with. So got to go back to that. And then talk about the start date. I have talked to Sarah and Sue Bucka today, and they really, really would like the person to start July 1st. They still want the full-time admin person. Although admin may not be the really best description here. That person's going to do more things than just what we think of admin. So therefore,
I didn't hear that, Kathy. I'm sorry.
this person is going to be trained, Tim, in what Youth and Family Services does. So this is not just a person who can move around from place to place. This person's going to have some specific training for this position as far as the work that they do, the confidential work that they do, the work that you've got to really understand how it's done. They do believe that if they get the go-ahead for July 1st, they can absolutely, within this environment, still get the person hired and working effectively, even if it is from home. So the fact that they won't be together in the office, they said they've thought about it and they think it still will work. That remember, their offices are pretty close quarters where they are, so they're going to be hard pressed to socially distance once they go back to work. So their druthers is to still hire the person July 1st. That's their first thing. If the vote that's approved at town meeting is that the January 1st is going to be the start date, then they are receptive to trying to use someone else in town that has some excess time to do some things. But the point they wanted me to make to everybody is that that person still won't be able to do everything they intend for the admin to do, again, because of the type of work that they're going to train their admin to do and the confidentiality of it. So they are receptive to getting some help. Sarah said she's spending almost all of her time right now doing admin work. That's how bad it's gotten. She goes, I'm not doing what I need to be doing. I'm doing it all. And she started listing all the stuff that she's doing. So,
Yeah, unless, I'm sorry, unless people have changed their votes. I mean, we've been over this multiple times and unless someone is going to indicate a willingness to change their vote, I think we should just move on because I
Well-
think among us, it's divided, correct?
To your point, John, Kathy, convince me that this is more than an admin role.
Could I say something about that? When they get calls, this isn't, hi, I'd like to make an appointment. These are people in crisis. And the person who answers the phone has to be able to handle that. They have to be able to listen to someone crying. They have to be able to know the words to say to calm them down. They have to be able to reassure them that while the office is busy, they'll find a way for the potential client to come in. They have to be somebody who can vouch for confidentiality because these people either are embarrassed or afraid or so upset that they need to be reassured in all these different ways. And I think we have to take that role very seriously. It's almost like training to be a psychologist. That's a first step. So it's way beyond what I would think of as a typical admin situation. And I think they need to have somebody right away.
So if that's true, given not if that's true, given that that's true, are we looking to hire, or are they looking to hire somebody who has some sort of license or credential or specific education?
I don't think they've said that, but I'm speaking for them and I'm not sure. I think that there are plenty of people who've come out of master's programs or just bachelor's programs who have had training in some way or another. They're not looking for somebody who's licensed. It may be somebody who eventually wants to be licensed, but I'm sure that's not I'm presuming that is not a requirement for them. My husband was a psychologist. I took those calls all the time. I booked his appointments. You've got to know how to do that. So, and I think they really need to be able to choose somebody, not just have someone come over because they have more time than they can use.
so I'm trying to get Sue back in here and I promoted her to panelist, but wait a minute, there she is. Okay, she should be here. I don't hear her or see her. So Andrew, I'm trying to unmute her.
I think she has to unmute herself.
So Sue, I hope you are hearing us and can unmute.
There she goes.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
So, Mr. Rooney, I thank you for asking that question. I just went over some of our minutes. There's $2,400 for a clinical supervisor that Sarah has been seeing and Megan has been seeing to kind of go over what they do to make sure that they're doing, when they counsel folks from town, that they're doing the appropriate thing. So it's like a counselor for a counselor. And this is prior to everything that's occurred in the last 3 months or 2 months. And some of it is some programming. So I apologize for not knowing that answer right away. We are in a unique position in this department. And I think I've said it to Kathy before and to the selectmen that when we hire this admin, I think that person needs to know how to triage, like a dispatcher triages at the fire department and the police department. We can't just have anybody in there. And I know everything looks so perfect in our town. Everybody thinks that we have money and that there aren't issues, but there are a lot of issues and it's just going to get worse. And I appreciate your time and effort on this. I know you've spent a lot of time on this. Sarah is spending, even though she's working from home, and so is Shannon, and so is Megan, Sarah's spending too much time on administrative details and not enough time on what's going on. And I think things are bad right now, but I really think things are going to get much, much worse. I really compare us to a police and or fire department. you cannot call there and get an answering machine. And Sarah has told our board that she's got so much work that she could give to an admin and train them, even if they don't go back. The reason she's not on this call right now is that she's on a call with a client. Otherwise, she would have been on it. So it's not, 9 to 5. She's continuing to take classes. She's actually referred classes to our board members. It's bad. It's going to get worse. And I really feel that this is an important department, and we can't share. We cannot share an admin. It's just too different. You're not going to feel comfortable going into an office or talking to someone about seeing somebody for all the different things that she hears. And I just wish I could tell you what she hears. That person that answers the phone is going to be triaging. I'm a nurse too, so that person's going to be triaging that specific issue, whether it's suicide or overdose, or I don't have enough money to support my family. So I'm asking you and telling you that I know people think everything is hunky-dory here. It's just not.
Thank you very much, Sue, for that.
So I
Anybody
thank-
else got a
I
question for
thank-
Sue?
I apologize for not having those answers.
No apologies are necessary.
So can I ask a question?
Definitely,
So
definitely.
this is Chelsea.
Hi.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, thanks. So right before you started talking about dispatcher, I was kind of thinking the same thing in terms of triage. So can you define for me if there's really two sets of responsibilities with this role, one being the triage piece and then one being kind of administrative paperwork, and kind of walk through those pieces?
Yes, so we could for a short time, have someone that just did, and we talked to Sarah about this today, the paperwork part of it and ordering office supplies but ultimately, and I think sooner than later, we need someone in there that doesn't talk to anybody else in town about what they've heard. The board itself, even though I know of circumstances, I don't know who those people are, what town residents that she's seeing, and who's coming. And now it's a phone call, right? It's not coming up the steps to the office and having nobody be sitting there and ring the bell and we'll call you. We'll call you when we have a moment. It got to the point in their offices that they couldn't even kind of keep track of how many people they were seeing, the three of them. Shannon is, there's three people in the department. Shannon is the one that's trying to look at all the outreach programs, and Megan is the assistant director, and Sarah is the director. So it's just so different than any other admin position that I can think of in the department, or in any of the departments in town. It kind of needs to be, it shouldn't be Sarah ordering office supplies, for example. And there should be somebody tracking exactly what they're doing every day. And this pandemic has caused Sarah to have to, because I think the town has asked her to do this, what are you doing every day? Which kind of angered me a little bit. What are you doing every day? Who are you, or not who are you seeing? How many people are you seeing? And how many people are the two people that work with you seeing? And what are they doing? And Sarah said to me, this is a good exercise because maybe somebody will see that there is a need here. So I can't tell you how important this is. And I know I so understand how fiscally responsible all of you are, but this is a department very much like an emergency department.
So do you know if it's ever been discussed for these phone calls to get routed to our dispatch center?
No, never. So that has not happened. So I think the police department and the fire department know that Sarah's department exists. And don't know too if you are all aware that Sarah and her team also go into the schools and have done counseling in the schools too. And right now that's not happening. And it's changed things completely, but she's working. I talk to her. If I don't talk to her daily, I talk to her every other day. It's going to get worse before it gets better. I just need you to know that. And so I do think that the police and fire department know that she exists, and Shannon is learning everything she possibly can about, which hopefully this is what will happen in the future, that when you call there, they don't want to do long-term counseling at Youth and Family Services. They want to be able to help you immediately with a crisis, and then be able to find you somebody that you can talk to, depending on what your issue is, whether it's homelessness or domestic abuse or sexual abuse. And, they don't take anything on. They don't take serious mental illness. If it's schizophrenia or bipolar disease, they can refer folks for that. But it's just the food pantry is overwhelmed, as I'm sure you all see, and the mental health stuff is even, it's gotten worse in families that they've never had to deal with before. So I don't think that we need her to be doing admin responsibilities. I think we need her to help the town's residents. This person that she's been seeing, and also Megan has seen, this consultant, I think is not only somewhat important, it's a way for her to say, this is what I'm going through. Am I handling this correctly? What would you do in this situation? And every town is different. But I cannot tell you. I think waiting till January is a mistake. I mean, I think they've been underfunded for too long, and I'm 57 years old, and I've been here for 25 years in town. It's good to know. It's good. No, it's not good to know that they're there. They do remarkable things. And for the longest time, they didn't let people know how much they did. So.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sue.
Thank you so much. Sorry, I rambled.
No, you didn't ramble. You did good. Okay, we're going to come back to this. I just want to get through the last one. That's January 1st, which is the 2 policemen, these women policemen. Chelsea, can you just repeat what I said a minute ago as far as what Chief Paul said the impact would be on him as far as the delay?
Right. So he had originally budgeted for 2 new officers for September to start the academy, which they pay them at a lower rate per week while they're at the academy, and then they backfill that shift with overtime. And the Board of Selectmen voted to move those hires until January 1st so then they would start in the spring academy, which probably would start around February. And so it's essentially delaying. And I think we talked about the cycle of how long it takes for an officer to come on shift fully. And when I talked to the chief, given the situation that's going on right now and how he is having to staff, he is filling that 3rd shift currently through overtime. So I think what this committee needs to kind of beat up is, do we want him to continue to do that and go with the 1/1 start date? And historically, police has had 1 to 2 officers leave in a year, and it takes a year to kind of backfill that position. So if we're going on the same track, we're gonna be down to 3 or 4 shifts if that kind of trend continues. So I think that's what we need to decide is, are we comfortable with, having a potential burnout of filling all those overtime shifts, or do we want to kind of revisit the 9/1 start date and make sure that we have those shifts filled?
Chelsea, is there the corresponding in the, what is it? $22,000 savings? I guess that's the police, right?
What are you looking at, Andrew?
The budget adjustment through 0502, is that the
Yeah.
22,246, is that the police there?
Yep.
So is that,
Where are you?
and that's just for those two, so I'm looking at the budget sheet, the first tab, like the positive budget adjustments, right?
No, you gotta go down. That's not, so go down. So it's 62,000 bucks. So go down to funding swaps. 62,000 bucks is the savings to push it to January 1st.
But that doesn't, I mean, the grand total for those two together for the full fiscal year 21 is $80,000.
So are you talking about a 7/1 start date?
No.
So
He's
no, I'm
talking about
saying,
with the
I'm just saying
impact
right
of
now with the
pushing-
9/1, those two people for fiscal year 21 was totaled together $79,431. So if we move them from 9/1, if we push it back 4 months, I would anticipate. So it's really, they're not starting 1/21. You're saying they're starting in April or something. So is that where
So they voted to not hire them until 1/1, but he would probably just start them when the academy starts because he's not. You can't have somebody work if they haven't gone to the academy.
So let's assume that this number's right. It's $62,000. I'll verify it, but let's assume it's $62,000.
Yeah, but do we see, I mean, that would make sense for the reduction in if they didn't start till, I don't know, March or April, whenever the academies are. But I don't see the increase in overtime.
He hasn't increased overtime. He's just going to assume the overtime budget he has, he's going to use for it.
Yeah, but his overtime budget was flat, pretty much.
He's still, but he returned $75,000 last year to the town on his budget. So I guess he's assuming he's got enough in there to do it, or he can move it around enough to make it work. Now, too, and this is important too, if you look at the one on the screen, to make sure you understand what's happened here. So reducing or moving the start date to 1/1 didn't save us any money as far as the tax rate goes, because Brian took it and put it someplace else. He added it to his benefits number because he thought that was a little bit short, and I don't remember why, but he thought it was short. So this did not save anything. So if we said leave it the way it is, and Brian, it wouldn't change anything if you kept it at July 1st or August 1st, whatever it is, September 1st. Brian just wouldn't have he wouldn't be able to add to his benefits number and put a little cushion in there.
So I think the risk here is if we move it to 1/1, we obviously miss the fall academy, and if we have any turnover in that department, then we're having to fill more than just the 2 shifts that don't have 3 officers on today. So, I think part of the reason why the chief has been able to turn back money is because he's had turnover in his department. And so he doesn't have, the full 19 officers at any given time, and some are in the academy, and we know we pay a lower rate for that while they're there. So that's the reason why he's been able to return money. So
and Chelsea, he didn't fill those shifts either. He didn't have 3-3-3 like he wants now, and like he
Right.
started doing. That's the other part of it.
Right. So I'd like to hear from kind of this committee what we think is the best to serve the town.
I mean, my opinion is to move them to the 9/1 like we had them before. I mean, 7/1 approval, but they would start 9/1, especially because if we're going to fill those shifts anyway, the new officers are much cheaper than the overtime for the existing.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree too.
Who was second agreement? John?
Tim,
Tim, okay. All right.
And I think Judy mentioned it too.
All right,
Yeah.
so let's at least try to vote on this tonight as far as the start dates of these three, Youth and Family Services, IT, and Police, because that would be very helpful, I think, to Brian, Mark, and Board Selectmen to at least know what we think about those, right? That's one thing we could, I think, we get out of the way first. But before we do Youth and Family Services, we've got to actually go back and vote for the position. We haven't concluded that. That's got to come first. All right, so let's start with the police. It sounds like there's pretty much agreement here. So everybody's here, right? Judy's there.
Yeah.
Okay, so can someone make a motion to basically not support moving the start date of the policeman forward to January 1st?
I move that we, how'd you say, do not move the start date forward, but keep it at, what was it?
Well, the money's there July 1st, but you know, the previous start date, whatever that is, September,
Okay.
whatever it was.
Keep it to the previous
September
start.
1st.
Okay.
Second?
Second it.
Okay, that was Andrew. Okay, so we got to do the roll call vote. So all in favor of the motions, doing it in the alphabetical order.
Buds, yes.
Cook, yay.
Malinowski, aye.
Martell, I.
Half aye.
Rooney abstain.
Okay, so that's 5-0-1 in favor of keeping the start date the way it was in the previous budget. Okay, now let's go to Tom Laflamme. So do we want to entertain what we think we need to do eventually, which is get Tom a more senior full-time person now? Do we want to postpone that and then just talk about getting his half-time person July 1st? Or do we want to talk about doing what we probably need to do now?
I think regardless of a full-time or part-time, it needs to be July 1st. And I would be in favor of upgrading it to a full-time.
Got a
Second.
motion?
Okay, so someone make a motion to,
I move that we do not move back the start date of the part-time MIS resource to 1/1. We keep it at the 7/1 start date, and we upgrade the position from a part-time to a full-time resource.
second?
Second.
Okay, roll call.
Buds, aye.
Cook, aye.
Malinowski, aye.
Martell, I.
Half aye.
Rooney, aye.
6-0. Okay, now let's talk about Youth and Family Services. So the first thing we've got to vote on is whether we have a majority that supports the full-time position. Then we'll talk about the date. So can someone make a motion to basically support the addition of a full-time Youth and Family Services admin?
I move, so moved.
Okay,
Second.
All right, okay, roll call.
All right, can we discuss?
Yes,
So after hearing what Ms. Buckett had to say, I would like to pursue figuring out a way to get these residents who are calling a more, I guess what I'm saying is, I don't know that what they asked for is really what they're looking to hire. What I heard is that they need somebody like a police dispatcher. And I would like to pursue looking at that as an option for residents who call. I mean, we already have police dispatchers who are fitting her description as being, they're not, they're under a department where it's expected that they have patient confidentiality, and they're staffed 24/7. I just think we have an infrastructure already in town that would serve that particular purpose of what they're looking to accomplish.
that's a small piece of what they want though, Chelsea, is
I
not the whole thing.
I understand, but I think that's what's breaking out the admin versus the crisis calls that are coming in. And maybe then we can, if we can get the crisis call addressed, then we're actually looking at more of an admin, regular admin position.
Anybody else?
No, I believe Ms. Butkin made a compelling case to get someone on board immediately with that set of qualifications. So I guess I differ with Chelsea in that regard.
Yeah, so do I.
All right, so did we have a second on that one?
Yeah.
Judy seconded.
So the motion is to support a full-time admin for Youth and Family Services. We're going to deal with the start date next. This is not the start date. This is just adding the position. We've had the motion, we've had a second, roll call.
Bud's eye.
Cook, aye.
Malinowski, no.
Martell, no.
Bath, aye.
Rooney, aye.
Okay, 4-2. All right, so we have supported the hiring of the full-time person. Now let's talk about the start date.
I just want to say, I mean, she moved the needle for me, just not enough. But I think she got closer. But fundamentally, I still got the sense that this was an administrative position, which is why I'm voting the way I am. And if we can get some kind of support for the crisis call, I think that could help.
So Tim, you're saying that you do think it's an admin position?
I think it's an admin position with a twist.
Yeah.
I do agree that there's a twist there. I don't know if it's enough of a twist to justify full-time. That's why I voted why I did.
Okay, we spent a lot of time on this one. It is, we still have a little bit of difference of opinion, but it's 4-2. Okay, now let's talk about the start date. Do we want to support July 1st, or do we want to push this person to January 1st and try to at least backfill for them with a town person who might have some extra time to do at least the non-confidential part of the job?
I think if we're gonna support the hiring, that we should start it sooner rather than later. This is a tough time.
All right, so why don't you make the motion, we'll get second, and then we'll see if anybody
All right,
has.
so how do we phrase the motion?
I support the hiring of the admin as of July 1st for Youth and Family Services.
Okay, I said that. So
Okay.
put it down in my words. Go ahead.
Second?
Second.
Who did that? Okay, John, Ms. Rooney. Okay, any further discussion as far as the start date of the full-time youth and family admin?
So I think I'll go back to my point of last week. In theory, I think that I agree that they do need admin help. And I would hate to see us have people in the system who have the same job description or similar skill set not being utilized during this time and not take advantage of having them assist this department immediately.
And Chelsea, I would normally agree with you. It does so happen I'm on the receiving end of a lot of phone calls from Sarah. So I know how much time she spent on the admin stuff because of my association with the 501c3 that helps them. If they were to use a town person for the interim, that means they've got to train another person January 1st. They are really under stress. What Sue did mention is that the pandemic has made domestic violence worse. It was already bad, but now it's worse. So they really are dealing with a lot of stuff. So I just want to try to help them do their job. And I think supporting the July 1st hire will go a long way to bringing up Sarah right away. They train the person once and then they're done. They've said they can do this remotely. They've thought about it. They think it works. So I can't be, I'm not going to, I think we've got a person that could do this, but I just don't want to make them have to do this twice.
I would like to see maybe in the interim, we do both. You know, if there's somebody there tomorrow that's not, not doing stuff because they can't be in the office, we should redeploy them tomorrow. I don't know why we aren't doing that across the board. I mean,
Okay.
it wouldn't hurt to have somebody as a backup for this person that we would, we voted to hire.
So I'm happy to mention that. It's kind of outside the scope of what we're trying to do right now, but
Yeah.
I'm happy to mention that.
Yeah, I
Because I
just,
do
I don't want to
I do
be in a
think-
position where we're hiring somebody and having to, in a year or 6 months from now, revisit staffing and making cuts elsewhere.
I don't either. If this were a different department, I might not be as committed to doing this as I am for this one.
I cannot, I think we need to make sure that we try to utilize the people that we have and try to protect them as much as possible by making them utilized. So that's all I'm gonna say.
But right now, there's no inclination to reduce headcount in the town, as far as I know. Doesn't mean I know everything, but I know of no push to do that. So there certainly is an effort right now to protect jobs. Okay,
agree.
so we've had the motion, we've had a second, we discussed, so roll call.
Okay, Bud's eye.
Cook, aye.
Malinowski, no.
Martell, no.
Pfaff, aye.
Ernie, aye.
And so that one's 422 as far as a start date that we would recommend would be July 1st. So we still have to try to come to an agreement with the Board of Selectmen. And again, they weren't against this. They're just trying to buy some time to look at what the pandemic is going to do to us the next 2 or 3 months. So that's the reason they're not opposed to it. Substantively, they just want to retain flexibility as far as what's going to happen going forward. I will say this, this will probably not be the right year to go to whatever town meeting we have with whatever few people we have with a split decision on the budget. So I do hope we can end up with an agreement with the Board of Selectmen before town meeting. All right, so that's progress. So it's almost 9 o'clock. I propose to do the following. Make an attempt between now and next week to take that $160,000 of the 2% exercise and try to bifurcate it into 2 buckets. One bucket that is just what they had to do because they were asked to do it. And the second bucket is try to identify expenses within that really are pandemic related and really won't be spent because whatever is not going to happen. Programs, travel, conferences, and see if we can't split it apart and look at things that should come out of there because they're not going to be spent. And if you leave it in, get moved for something else versus those that really were arbitrary.
And Kathy, as part of that, are you also going to look at whether or not budgets are impacted on the positive side as a result of the pandemic?
And by positive, you mean that this is something they're not going to spend?
Yeah,
or-
what Andrew mentioned earlier in terms of.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the rec department and fire department is because of the pandemic, we're going to increase something that wasn't in their original budget, that they haven't had the opportunity yet to state that
Okay,
because
so
of this
increase their
situation,
budget.
we should ask for more.
Yeah, there's no
Increase their
PPE.
budget.
There's no PPE in any of these budgets other than DPW. I actually looked.
Right.
I guess they always
Yeah.
put it in their budget. So they don't, nobody has that. So, okay, yes, I can do that too as part of this.
Yeah.
Right. In other words, really try to pandemicize, if that's the word, this budget and understand what we think we're facing. Okay, next topic is reserve fund. Right now, the reserve fund is projected to be $180,000 again for fiscal year 21, same as fiscal year 20. There are definitely a few people that think that we should consider adding something to that because we just don't know. For example, we are going to be asked, I'm sure, to pay for or to approve the payment that's going to be made to pull off this town meeting, all the technology, et cetera, to set up the separate rooms. I think it's about $8,000. I am quite sure that Jim Haggerty is going to ask for reserve fund transfer because he didn't have that in his budget. That's this year, that's not next year. So I don't know what else we're facing. I have no idea what we might face.
But
Maybe-
Kathy, that's a perfect example of Jim needs $8,000 of which he doesn't have in his budget for next year, and we're going to have a fall town meeting.
That's right. Now, he knew about the fall town
That-
meeting, that is in there. It may be it's gonna be different though, you're right, so it may be more expensive because of this. So, I just want to see what people think about doing that. I broached this with the board of selectmen the other night, I raised my hand, but they didn't spend any time talking about it. So what do you guys think about that?
I would suggest we increase it.
I mean, if we don't spend it, it goes back. It's not like we're not gonna spend it just to spend it. It goes back to the town, so it's not wasted money.
I mean, we're not even approaching the limit, correct?
There is no limit on the reserve fund as far as I know.
No, I'm talking about the 180.
Oh, this year, we've approved 70 so far. We've got about 100, we've got about 100 left in it right now.
I'd
So,
I'd leave it as it is. That's what I would say.
so you want 180. Okay. Anybody else, want to make do
I would increase our reserve fund.
you have a number in mind, Tim?
I would put it back to where it was before it was lowered.
It was 200.
I'd
So
do
it got lowered.
250 or
Last time it
300.
got lowered, it was 200 to 180.
I think either 250 or 300.
I would agree with that.
Yeah,
Chelsea?
me too.
Chelsea?
So I think it depends on where we come out on reducing to the 2% budget. So because I would be more inclined to increase it if we're going to a less than 1% increase on the year over year.
So you want to wait and see where we end up before you decide? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm fine with that. I actually didn't plan on voting on this night. I just wanted you to start thinking about what a new number might be if we do support it. So it sounds like
I would
250.
agree. I would agree. I just think I might be more in the 125 or 150 range in terms of what I think is acceptable versus under 1. If it's reserve fund, that increases it there.
1.25. Okay, all right. And again, the reserve fund would just add to free cash if we don't spend it. So, okay, so there's that. I want to make sure everybody saw how the capital ended up as far as capital planning committee. So I'm going to show you that. And there's nothing that's going to surprise you on here. I think this is most of what we approved. One thing they did change is the first thing on here, the $35,000. We changed the name of it. And I say we because Andrew and I are on this committee. So we broadened it so that it could be used for other things than it used to be called transfer station study. Karen Galligan was okay with this. So it's just basically at the use of the capital committee to do the work they need to do in various studies. And it may all be used for transfer station. We don't know. So that is one small change. It's a little bit cosmetic. Road maintenance is the same. Lucas Device, we already approved that. We did approve the 45. We approved the 100. The 25,000 is the new thing that we talked about for the bathroom. Given what we talked about before, I didn't think anybody would have much of a problem with that one. So let me ask the question, anybody have any problem with spending the $25,000 to get them a new bathroom? Sounds like it's pretty cheap. I mean, they clearly need one. Everybody I think thinks that, right? Okay, and then the next two we approved too. So that's what the warrant article for this town meeting looks like. The Finn boiler replacement still on here, and so is the new fire truck. They're being bonded, so they don't have much of an impact on this year's fiscal year 21 budget. Okay. So there's
Kathy,
that.
did we ever get a final word from superintendent on that Finn boiler?
No. So what Andrew's talking about is, you may recall that when they came in from us, they said they absolutely needed it this summer. It had to be done this summer. It was on its last legs. Then during the course of the work with the capital planning committee, they decided they didn't need it because they had an issue with the budget that had been set by the state for it. It looked like they come in with a budget a lot more than they anticipated. This cost is being shared with the state in some form or fashion. They apparently have decided that they're still fine with the number as originally proposed. They actually think they've got a good number and they do want it this summer. So I will get that, Andrew. We really should ask why they thought it was okay, then not okay, then it's back to be okay. I will find out. Okay, so this is stuff we've gone through. We know what's here. Budget capital.
That's the one I was going to ask about.
Okay, so the big thing that changed here is one of the vehicles for the fire department that got removed. Capital Planning Committee worked with the chief and realized they could shuffle cars in a way that he did not need a second vehicle.
Hey, Kathy, do you have any update or can you get an update relative to any pilot discussions that have taken place and particular pilot donations for these items?
The answer is I haven't talked to Mr. Healy in a while, but I will before next week.
Thank you.
Okay.
Why is the fire chief's vehicle so much more expensive?
It's not just a regular vehicle, Tim. It's a Ford Expedition that's set up to be kind of a command vehicle. And,
I mean,
and this
what-
was one that we had an issue with, or I personally had an issue with in the capital planning committee, because they already have one, but they want to have a backup. They have an Explorer now that still has some life left on it, but it's not quite suitable for that need. You know, and I kind of was reluctant to it, and I thought it should be pushed out a few years.
I mean, it seems on the surface, because I don't know enough about this, but is this really a critical need? It's
All right.
$100,000 for two vehicles.
Well, one of them's police,
Right.
one's fire. Okay, Andrew can do this. So next meeting, can we come back with more details, Andrew, as to why capital planning really thought this was the right thing to do and to get rid of the other one that he had on there? All right, so we're not voting on this tonight, so we'll come back and discuss that one again. But more or less, this looks like where we left off is my point.
But you moved, it originally was in spring and now it's in fall for discussion. Is that right?
Everything we're talking about now is spring, is the June 13th meeting.
I don't think that the chief vehicle for fire is for this fall, for the Springtown meeting.
I do. Andrew, what do you think?
I feel like we might have moved it to the fall. I'm trying to remember.
I thought the only thing on the fall was the hook truck.
No, the fire chief vehicle, I believe, has been moved to the fall.
All right.
Well, if it hasn't, I suggest it is. And the other one on the budget capital one is, didn't we talk about moving maybe the TASER program into the operational budget? Because it's recurring.
I never talked about that. I wanted it to go through the Harvard Fund. So that was what I wanted.
Yeah.
And he did move some things over the Harvard Fund. Each of the chiefs moved some things over to the Harvard donation account, where they give, the Harvard bookstore gives money that is specifically usable only for fire department and police department. I don't remember talking about putting the tasers in the operating budget, Andrew.
Yeah, I think we talked about doing it out years, but
In
just one of those that
CPC.
didn't quite
In
fall.
CPC. CPC.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's different. So you're probably right. Okay. So we'll talk about this again. We'll get a better answer on the why we really need to buy the fire chief's car right now.
Do you want me to have Jason dial in to answer that?
Right now?
Yeah.
No,
No? Okay.
I'm too tired, Chelsea. We'll get to him. I'll talk to him. We'll get back to him and talk to him too. Okay, so we've made progress, but we're going to have to meet again next week to truly try to finalize everything that relates to the June 13th ATM. Monday's obviously a holiday. Tuesday doesn't work for me. Wednesday does, Thursday does. Do either one of those days not work for anybody?
Kathy, does it make sense to try to meet after the selectmen meet? Because otherwise we're going to put, I guess, our position out there. They may agree or not agree, and then we'll have to meet again.
I think they're waiting to hear from us. And so until we finalize ours, I'm not sure they're going to meet again. They think the next meeting is going to be a joint meeting with us. So they voted, John. They voted on the budget. They didn't change their mind, but they voted on it. They voted on start dates. They voted to support the 1/1 start date. So I think they think for the moment that they're done until they hear from us.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. So, does Wednesday not work for anyone?
Works for me, Wednesday or Thursday.
Do we have to ask Tom for an open slot?
Yes, we do, don't we,
point.
Tim? Tom, can you look at calendars and see if Wednesday at 6 works?
Sorry, that was Wednesday.
Next Wednesday at 6?
Next Wednesday is the 27th. It looks like it is available.
Okay, so we know that one works. What about Thursday? Anybody can't do Thursday? Anybody would prefer to do Thursday instead of Wednesday? I think we should stick with Wednesday because it gives us another day in case, every day's going to count right now. So sounds like Wednesday is the better day of the two. Okay,
At 6?
so, yep, Wednesday at 6. Okay.
Right.
All righty. We've still got a few people in the audience. So any public comment? Does that look like it? Okay. Okay, motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
All in favor, roll call.
Bud's eye.
Cook, aye.
Malinowski, aye.
Martel, aye.
Half eye.
Rooney, I.
Rooney.
Okay, so 6-0.
Thank
Okay, so feel free to call me in between now and next week. I'll keep you posted as to answers to some of these questions so that hopefully by the time we meet next week, you really have decided what you think is appropriate, especially with the 2% piece. Okay, that's kind of our work is the 2% piece. All right, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.